Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Lorehammer, where we talk about everyone's favorite grim and dark setting. And the Lorehammer heresy continues because, once again, we are without our glorious God Emperor Mark. So you have me today, Gerald, and we also have Jordan from the also from the Star Lores podcast.
hmm Yeah, happy to be here. Let's talk about some wolves.
Woo! And we have the great and powerful Bro Diddley.
Hi. How y'all doing today?
Good.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but I'm quite hyped for this episode. And I was hyped for
Me
the
too.
yesterday's episode as well. So because we are continuing the epic saga of Leman Russ. So if anyone had seen that meme or that gif that I posted earlier with that scene from the Northman, witness the rise of the Russmen.
Oh yeah, I love that movie. It's great. It also makes me think very much of Leman Russ and other wolfy things.
Good old space wolves and their wolves on wolves on wolves on wolves on wolves on wolves.
It's wolves on fangs on wolves on claw wolf and wolf claw.
If anyone has ever seen text to speech, there is this whole thing where Rogel Dorn is talking about the space wolves to the Emperor. Emperor just like stares at him for like a solid minute, and he just goes, "All I ever got from that was wolf, 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 and wolf."
Oh, and Jack Cober in the comments. Whoa! There's no wolves on Fenris.
Gasp!
Oh boy.
Oh man. So good times, good times. So just before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Join us on the Discord. It's absolutely free. Just create a Discord account, and it's a pretty neat place to be. You get to hang out with the likes of myself, Bro Diddley's on there at some point, Jordan's on there at some point, Mark's on there at most of the time. So yeah.
Absolutely. And if you're not a filthy heretic and you want to join the Imperial Tithe, go ahead and do that. For $2.50 a month, you get an ad-free version of the show. And for $5 a month, you can also jump in on the video version, which we'll have available for you. And you can also, jump in on the live streams and whatnot. But if I'm on an episode, you can join me for some whiskey and Warhammer on the video. Today we're doing one called Goodrich and William. It's their 10-year cast. Not a super high vintage, but it's nice, quite sweet. Little bit of candy on the nose, but very good.
Sounds delicious. You know what else is delicious, guys? Being on the live stream. So if you join the Patreon, join the Imperial Tithe, you do get access to the live stream with the live chat room during the show. Lots of people are on there, and we also have call-in guests at the end of the episode. So if you want to be on a Lorehammer episode and it's secretly all you've ever wanted, now's the time to join the Imperial Tithe, and you can be a part of that.
It's such a good time all around, and we get some wild stuff in the comments every now and then.
Yeah.
So
100%. And to also piggyback off of Jordan's Whiskey Wednesday, it is my ice cap day.
Oh yeah.
I need to start
My Tim
partaking.
Hortons ice cappuccino.
Very nice. Might add a little bit of whiskey to that, and I might partake.
There you go.
I will
Since I'm
definitely
down,
partake.
since I'm bereft of some Fenrisian ale for tonight's episode.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's okay though. So, just a general outline of kind of what we're going over. We'll do a quick little recap of Leman Russ. The very much death world of Fenris. The Great Crusade, how the Space Wolves are, and then we will start talking about the Council of Nicaea. I know I've brought that up a few times when talking about the other Primarch episodes, so that's going to be an interesting thing to talk about tonight. And then, of course, afterward is the Horus Heresy and a lot of interesting things Leman Russ does during that time period. I do not apologize to the Thousand Sons fanboys out there in the comments. So, boo hoo. And then, of course, after the heresy, there's the Great Scouring, and then, like most loyalist Primarchs, he disappears. So, and then there's a few other things that we'll talk about to just kind of like his overall personality. Although I think he was very succinctly kind of, talked about in last night's episode. So if you weren't there for that, we'll do a quick recap here of all that. War gear, combat ability, and just what kind of legacy did he leave? So without further ado, unless there's any other tangents that Jordan or Brody like to go on, I will hand it off to Jordan for the recap.
Yeah, for sure. Let's just do a quick overview of what we've already discussed if you tuned into episode 170. So Leman Russ, he's the Primarch of the Space Wolves chapter. He was a fierce and proud leader whose loyalty to the Emperor was unwavering. Known for his savage combat prowess and indomitable spirit, Russ was often seen as the epitome of the warrior prince archetype, embodying the traits of courage, strength, and loyalty. Raised on the harsh world of Fenris, he forged a bond with his space wolves that was unbreakable as the bonds of blood and war, and he played a crucial role in the Great Crusade, leading his space wolves with distinction in many battles across the galaxy. And we obviously also don't want to forget he's basically the 40K Jungle Book. It's Mowgli being raised by wolves, blah, blah, blah. So
I can't believe I've never made that connection before.
Yeah, it's cool. It's sweet. I'm not dissing it, but I just wanted to point that and make that observation.
That was the first thing. Like I remember getting into like Warhammer. My wife was like, "Oh, like what are you guys planning on? What are you guys planning on like playing or painting?" And I was like, "I kind of want to do Space Wolves." And my wife's like, "What's that?" And I kind of explained what Space Wolves was to her. And she's like, "So Mowgli, but winter and in space?" And I was like, "Shut up! And you ruined it."
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
But speaking of how this all kind of came to be with Leman Russ, he was on Fenris. Fenris is the home world of the Space Wolves. It's a harsh, icy planet plagued by savage storms, untamed wildernesses, and dangerous creatures. The world is known for its brutal climate, where survival is a constant struggle. Its inhospitable environment has shaped its inhabitants into warriors of unmatched resilience and tenacity. The planet's fierce wildlife, including the massive wolves that roam the land, serves as a fitting backdrop for the space wolves' nature, untamed, proud, and fiercely loyal to their kin and the Emperor.
So, kind of just like it was mentioned last night's episode, good old lapdog. What's more loyal, But
I do
funny
have
thing, though.
do you think like and maybe we'll get more into this later on in the episode, but is Leman Russ like perhaps the most loyal Primarch? Like he is just the least chance of ever going to chaos. Or would it be someone like Lionel Johnson or something like that?
That's a pretty interesting question. I think I can't remember which book or what part of the Horus Heresy lore it was from, but like when Horus was trying to figure out which Primarchs he can turn to his side, like he immediately wrote off like the big three. He immediately wrote off were Rogel Dorn, Lionel Johnson, and Russ as like
Yeah.
they would. He just knew right then and there they would never turn.
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
think you're right.
And a whisper from the warp is saying, I think between Dorn and Russ, you got some strong contenders. So
Yeah, I think Russ and Dorn are going to be the most loyal because but I think Russ could be more corruptible because when
Like,
you
how do
look
you
at
mean?
what happened in the Horus Heresy where um Horus basically tricked him into destroying the Thousand Suns. He's almost too trusting whereas Dorn trusts but verify. I trust you, but I'm also going to verify everything you say. And if I haven't heard it from the Emperor's mouth, I don't believe it. You can also see, like in the Siege of Terra books, there's a Dorn basically gets separated in like the warp storm on the Vengeful Spirit and gets trapped and basically lives like 100 lifetimes in like a couple seconds. It's basically what it turns out to be. But in that entire time, he's being tempted by demons, and he's never tempted. He's never like wavering. He never wavers. He's always like, "My name is Rogodorn. The Emperor is my father." And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, you're pretty loyal.
This chaos course of action is most unwise.
Right? Oh man.
Yep. I think, and I will. Okay, I know I just dunked on the Thousand Sons fanboys, but to their credit, one big complaint about Russ was like he was like loyal to a fault during the Horus Heresy. It was just like he follows Biggie's orders without question, and I can see where that becomes an issue. Again, I'm a Space Wolves fanboy. Enough that the only model I have was just a converted rune priest, which is basically the Terminator librarian, and then like an improved. I call it an improved Wolfen because it was a third party werewolf.
You know what? That's funny. Like I've always liked the Space Wolves, and then I bought a bunch of like I bought like a bunch of Space Wolf stuff off of a buddy of mine. He just had like some random squads and like an old fine cast rune priest, and I took that and I made a couple squads and like kit bashed them really like heavily and everything like that, and I've got like just one leader and two squads of like assault marines basically, but in wolf form, and I love them. I think they're amazing, but I'm afraid to paint them because I don't like the baby blue paint scheme that the 40k ones have. So I'm like, I don't know how to paint these in a way that I would like.
Yeah, I feel like Citadel kind of improved on that. Like they made it more like a weathered gray type of look to it, as opposed to like the really bright baby blue that you see in like the old stuff.
I feel like all the models I've seen of Space Wolves are more like a grayish, but maybe I haven't seen all of them.
Yeah, I think it was. I think like if you look at like the Horus Heresy stuff, which, and like whenever you look at any of the Horus Heresy paint schemes for, any of the Space Marine chapters, I find I like the Horus Heresy schemes more. They're just like they're darker, or they have more pop, but they've been painted in a way that is slightly different, and I just find they look better. So I'll probably paint them like a 30k style, but you never know. But yeah, no, I think the I think it's Space Wolves are one of the most loved chapters because they are very relatable as quote unquote the good guys because of how loyal they are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I'll give it that, but I've also like I will admit, like my very first venture into the Lorehammer Discord was nothing but Space Wolf hate, and I was just like, and like when I was painting like my very first Space Marines, I was looking into possibly doing Space Wolves because hey, wolves are cool, Vikings are cool. I mean, that was all I knew, being very fresh into the hobby, and it was literally nothing but Space Wolf slander. So I'm just like, maybe I'll just keep my mouth shut for this.
Maybe I'm just not going to say anything. I won't post any pictures. There you go. So everybody knows now, Gerald, you're just a closet Space Wolf lover, and you're gonna show us your 5,000 points of Space Wolves that you have painted, and to the highest standards.
I feel like we should like really start just pumping up Space Wolf propaganda now, just to troll a little bit.
I'm
just troll every time. This
is a cause I believe in. So As we're pumping
Anybody
up
ever
space,
says anything about Thousand Suns or they say anything about Space Wolves, it's just utter propaganda. Like, do you guys even know who the best Primarch is? It's obviously Leman Russ.
oh, speaking of, I know I usually like bring in like my Primarch model if I finish it. Unfortunately, battle report, I'm located to a different fortress monastery this time around because Nurgle's Rot has been a lot more extensive than I had previously assumed. So that's going to be a work in progress. So to make up for that, I actually posted a picture of my completed Leman Russ to the Imperial Tithe channel, I believe. So there you go.
I'm gonna go check that out.
No, Jack, I do not have Bjorn. In fact, the only actual Space Wolf models I have are a couple of Fenrisian wolves that I painted in the style of Gary and Frecky from for Russ. Everything else is either a third-party model or something that I converted from the Leviathan Terminator set. So again, I like them so much. I actually don't have any of their models. So, oh, the irony. Okay, but now for actual Space Wolf propaganda, the Great Crusade. The Great Crusade was a galaxy-spanning campaign initiated by the Emperor of Mankind to reunite the fractured human empire and spread the light of the Imperium across the stars. Led by the Emperor and his Primarchs, the Crusade sought to bring countless worlds into the fold of humanity under one banner. This monumental period in history saw the forging of the Imperium, the creation of the Space Marine legions, and a relentless drive for expansion. However, it was also marked by internal struggles, the emergence of chaos, and the eventual betrayal of Horus, leading to the outbreak of the Horus Heresy.
Yeah, the big event that I think most people are pretty familiar with. So let's get into the Space Wolves themselves, just the overview of the chapter. The Space Wolves, or Vilka Fenrica. How do you say that? Vilka? Vilka Fenrica are a fierce...
Yeah, the Vilka Fenrica.
Fenrica, okay. Yeah.
Don't really roll your R's.
Yeah. Vilka Fenrica, okay. Are a fierce and independent chapter of Space Marines descended from the Primarch Leman Russ, known for their ferocity in battle and their wolf-like demeanor. The Space Wolves are fiercely loyal to each other and to the Emperor. Unlike other chapters, the Space Wolves maintain a more tribal and less rigidly structured hierarchy, embracing their primal instincts and the warrior spirit of their homeworld, Fenris. Their unique culture blends ancient traditions, shamanistic practices, and an intense warrior code that makes them one of the most formidable forces in the Imperium. Interesting. They kind of remind me, oh man, what's the name's escaping me? Someone help me. The sort of Mongolian styled chapter.
Oh, the White Scars?
Yeah, the White Scars. Just in terms of like they're on like a very brutal sort of planet. They're shamanistic, kind of tribal, very tribal in that way, which is kind of interesting.
I totally agree. It's kind of they're just two different types of barbarian. Like it is the idea, right? So like the White Scars are almost more cultured.
Yes.
But that's what like everybody kind of thinks. They're like, oh, they're just barbarians, but they do have they have poetry and like throat singing and stuff that they do in the White Scars in like a whole bunch of their books. And yeah, yeah. But the Space Wolves just get drunk and fight each other.
Yeah.
So they're like kind of more real barbarians, in my opinion.
But that's the funny thing is like they revel in that, but they're actually smarter than they let on, or at least Russ is smarter than he lets on. So
and I think that's kind of like the point, like what Jordan said, like they're very like shamanistic. So they're still very smart. They still have like an idea of like what's going on around them and like how that's all supposed to work. But they are more tribal, and there's not very many Space Marine chapters like that. It's really just the Space Wolves and the White Scars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very,
that
very
I
much
can
so.
think of.
Yeah. Purge had a quick question regarding the Volca Fenrica. Is that the High Gothic name for them? That is the Fenrisian name for them. Believe it or not, that's what the Space Wolves actually call themselves. So
The High Gothic, like it's either the Vilca Fenrica or the Route, which is the Route is what the Vilca Fenrica means.
Okay, yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. I love that we have a hobby that has background lore on why certain names are and like that they have different languages. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's all just made up words, man. I love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I, li- I like that this was brought up like when old Lorehammer had talked about the Space Wolves before, but it was like I like the theory that different languages between planets. I think so. I think you're right. But there was like the people on Fenris actually had different terms for like their roles and whatnot, but the Imperium was just lazy and just did wolf, 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 wolf. So that was
Exactly.
that was the cheeky response to all of that. And I saw what you said there earlier, Jack. No, I don't have one, and I never will. That's all I'm going to say.
But there's lots of different languages within 40K. Because like there's like I know whatchamacallit, the word bearers, they have Colchizian. The White Scars are Chigorian. And the Space Wolves is Fenrisian, and it's all their own different base language sets.
Yeah.
So
Like their own dialects. I mean, even Gothic has there's different versions of Gothic.
yeah,
Right?
they're high and low.
Yeah.
Exactly. Also, Purge made a good point too. He's like, I would argue a lot of shamanistic / druidic cultures are a lot more civilized than we give them credit due to Christian propaganda. It's 100% true. Like like, but and it works the same way in 30K and 40K. 30K was the imperial truth, and basically this way of like there is no gods, so shamanism was looked at as weird. And then in 40K, there's only one god, so it's like shamanism's weird. It's like, well, not like okay, like sure, if you want to look at it that way.
I mean, this whole thing too, though, it's a little weird to like shit on shamanism because I feel like they have the Imperium has psychers, right? Like they have people who like connect to they may not use that same like religious language, but like aren't they just kind of doing a lot of the same stuff as a shaman hypothetically would do on a more primitive planet?
This is exactly right, and it's actually part of the next thing we're going to talk about, the Council of Nicaea, and has all to do with that shamanistic versus like what is a sanctioned psyker? Is it just shamanism or not? So, the Council of Nicaea was a pivotal event during the Great Crusade when the Emperor sought to address the growing concerns over the use of psychic powers within the Space Marine legions. Held on the world of Nicaea, the council saw many of the legions, including the Space Wolves, clash over the Emperor's proposed ban on the use of psychic abilities. Ultimately, the Emperor decreed that all psychers within the Space Marine legions would be forbidden from practicing their powers, fearing their potential for corruption. This decision sowed the seeds for further division within the legions and set the stage for the heresy that would follow. So, to expand on that slightly, at the Council of Nicaea, the big people that were like for psychers were the Blood Angels, the Thousand Sons, and the White Scars. They were all like, yeah, psychers are good. And on the against side was the Space Wolves, who have their own psychers and use them all the time, but they are they're not rune priests. They are. Is it rune priests?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rune
Spaceful
priest. Yeah,
psychers. Yeah, spaceful psychers are rune priests. Yeah.
rune priest. Yeah, okay. I was just having a freaking moment there. A rune priest, but they're just using. It's just weather magic. It's not warp magic. It's just weather magic. And the Death Guard and somebody else were big ones against it. I can't remember. Um, but yeah, so it's
Yeah.
kind of funny that one of the biggest proponents against psychers were the guys that used psychers a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, wait, why? Why are you doing this?
I did want to riff a little bit on the Council of Nicaea as well, or sorry, Nicaea, because it's obviously influenced by the real world history of the Council of Nicaea, which
Yeah,
is
dude.
like one of the first ecumenical councils in the church. A lot of people sort of say this is when the Catholic Church officially became, but the whole thing about the Council of Nicaea in the 300s AD was it was all about this thing called the Arian heresy, which was like rooted in Gnosticism and stuff. And so it is just kind of interesting that they play these parallels in the 40K, which I love it. I like that they pull that history, because that's a deep cut that not a lot of people are going to be aware of. But the Council of Nicaea was basically in the church was basically to categorize what is a heresy and what is orthodox, so it's just kind of interesting they have that parallel here.
And that was
I love that.
oh yeah. As a very not really good practicing Catholic, I can confirm that that was basically like a whole point to kind of how do I phrase this right? I guess to kind of set the organization up to basically confirm this is what we believe in. This is where the heresy comes from. Just like what Jordan was saying. So yes, can confirm that the Council of Nicaea.
Yeah.
So
Jack in the comments says he asked if the Horus Heresy itself is related to the Arian heresy. Maybe that might be a bit more of a stretch. I don't know.
I think the idea of heresy is probably
Yeah.
with that, though.
Yeah, exactly. Like
yeah.
if you think of a crusade, I mean, all of these are obviously riffing off of Christendom back in the whole Imperium is riffing off Christendom in a lot of ways, and obviously a Great Crusade, blah blah blah. I don't know. It's hard to say because the Arian heresy happened much earlier than any of the Crusades happened. We're talking like 800 to 1,000 years before the Crusades started happening. So I don't know if the Horus Heresy itself was inspired in any way by the Arian heresy, but maybe I could be wrong.
I always imagined it kind of more like the biblical, like Satan's rebellion or Lucifer's rebellion kind of thing, because he was like the favorite creation that rebelled against his own father, and then created this ginormous battle that really just kind of just tore everything, really ruined any chance of like a perfect utopia. Essentially, that's what I always took it as, and of course like all the the religious language is there for it, but that kind of makes me wonder, Jordan, you might have a better idea of this. Like, of course, we know it as the Horus Heresy, we know it as the Great Crusade. Were those events called that during that time? Because the emperor was making this big push towards the imperial truth, which was there are no gods. There's, this is like state mandated atheism. So, so were those two events called that in that time, or were they called something, or were they called, the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy?
Yeah, you're probably right. It probably was only called that in retrospect, kind of after the event happened. I mean, I'm sure people started calling Horus and his other brother Primarchs who joined him heretics. I'm sure they were calling them that and blasphemers and whatnot. But you would imagine it was called that in retrospect. Purge in the chat asked, does Warhammer make those deep cuts based on their Germanic culture. I don't know. Do you guys have any idea if Warhammer makes any has any inspiration from Germanic cultures?
I think it's kind of funny. People want to pull those deep cuts and say it's just from like Western based stuff, but it's not. Like the White Scars are a very good kind of idea of that, because it's not just Germanic culture, it's Asian culture as well. They do a lot of things that they pull um Asian culture for the White Scars, and like it has a lot of different things. Like Jagatai Khan is he's the Primarch of the White Scars. If you look up Chagatai, CH instead of
Yeah.
J, Chagatai Khan is a son of Genghis Khan, who
Okay.
ruled over what's called the Golden Horde, which Jagatai Khan in 40K calls his White Scars his Golden Horde. And
Yeah.
it's called the Ordu of Jagatai, and
Mhm.
all that means is the Order of Jagatai, and it's like his military proud. So there are a lot of deep cuts
Oh
where
yeah.
you don't necessarily see what's happening unless you know that culture. I'm a big fan of the Mongol conquests, and like I love Mongolian history. I have a map of the Mongol conquests and crusades up on my wall right there.
Crazy. That's
There's a
cool.
lot of different things that like Warhammer pulls from in a lot of different cultures.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's very interesting, and I don't think it's Germanic based solely. Personally, I think
Nah.
they've
Nah.
taken ideas from multiple different places and kind of smashed them together.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. Because like there was one lore tuber I saw. This was a few years ago, but like, could you? Because we've talked about this before. Like all the different Primarchs have these different nationalities. Or I mean, they look like they have these different nationalities. So you can make an argument for obviously the Space Wolves are Norse themed. Obviously the White Scars are very Mongol themed. Thousand Sons are very much Egyptian themed.
Like the Dark
Um,
Angels are like medieval knights almost kind of
e-
thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
The
And then
yeah.
some, and I think I heard someone say that like the word bearers and Lorgar, you can get like there's like a lot of Hebrew. You can get a lot of Hebrew from that,
Mm.
like especially with all the inscriptions that they write on themselves and everything. So
I
there's
was gonna just say like Near East, yeah, like it's gonna be
yeah,
either Hebrew or Islamic. Like they kind of have
hmm
that vibe to them.
yeah, yeah. So that's there's they're pulling from a very wide range, just like what Brody is talking about. Um, but
And
obviously,
remember the Dark Angels were originally supposed to be Native American themed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they
yeah, you're right.
they had like a bunch of
That's funny.
the models had like feathers and bead talismans on them, and they had like this Native American theme, because
hmm
it was supposed to be this forest world, which was supposed to be the North American New World, like the New World continent and everything like that. And then they made it nightly, and it was like, we're just going to erase that part. We that was back to the drawing board.
That is
Well,
crazy. Funny.
I think if I'm mistaken, or either that or this lore or this other lore tuber was very, very wrong. But I think a lot of that kind of got transposed over to the Raven Guard because like a lot of the Raven imagery comes from the type of ravens that you only see in North America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
That's a
Yeah,
possibility, but don't quote me on that.
yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So, but of course, all this talk about different cultures, this is all still the Horus Heresy. So here we go. This is where things just get really bad. Back to Russ. Leman Russ, the Wolf King, brought worlds into imperial compliance with a ferocity that shook the heavens. His conquest blazed like a comet, reaching deep into the farthest corners of the galaxy, long beyond the light of Segmentum Solar. The Space Wolves were not the only legion to walk the path of reunion with their genetic father. One by one, the Emperor's 20 sons rose again, leading their mighty legions, each in their own glory. Years passed, and countless worlds were brought under the banner of the Imperium, but like all things born of grandeur, the Golden Age came to an end. And I think it was mentioned last time, but if or last night's episode. But if you either weren't here for that, dear listeners, or if it wasn't, Russ was Russ was the second Primarch to be discovered. So he, like Horus, had more of that opportunity to kind of gain that prestige, that that glory from the Great Crusade, since he was the second one discovered. In a deed that would scar the galaxy for all eternity, Russ's brother Horus, the War Master of the Great Crusade, favored son of the Emperor, turned his back on the light. With treacherous fury, he embraced the ruinous powers, seeking to overthrow his father and claim the throne of Terra for himself. This betrayal, this cataclysmic schism, was known as the Horus Heresy, and it nearly shattered the Imperium to dust. Horus's rebellion tore the heart of the Imperium as Space Marine Legion clashed with Legion, Primarch against Primarch. In the beginning, few could fathom the depth of Horus's corruption. Some legions stood in the shadows, uncertain, unsure of the path to take. But Horus's lies and dark promises ensnared 9 legions, twisting their brothers to his cause through treachery, deceit, and the corruption of the soul. Some followed out of a bond forged in the fires of war, a loyalty to their war master. It was only when it was too late that many realized their mistake, for Horus had become a creature of pure darkness, consumed by the chaos gods, his mortal form a mere husk to the power he now wielded. Yet through all the vile betrayals, Leman Russ remained true. His oath of loyalty, sworn to the Emperor upon their first meeting, could not be broken. The Space Wolves, like wolves at the Emperor's side, stood firm through the storm of the heresy, ever true to their vow. Their actions, fierce and legendary, became part of the greatest wars ever fought. But the deeds of those dark days are but whispers now. Written in blood of warriors long dead, their memory is shrouded in myth. For the records were lost in the flames of war, and only in the centuries to come would chroniclers dare recount the horrors of that time. The Space Wolves did not stand at the last battle on Terra's soil, but their claws were buried deep in the very roots of the heresy. It was in those first dark days that the Wolf King's sons found their eternal enemy, the Thousand Sons. Their feud, born in fire and blood, would last across the ages as unbroken line of hatred between brothers forever lost to the darkness. Leman Russ, a book of admonitions from the Legiones Astartes. Harden your soul against decadence, but do not despise it, for the soft appearance of the decadent may be deceptive. One need only consider the harlequin dances of the Eldar to see the truth of this proposition.
Nice. All right.
I never knew that he saw a Harlequin dance.
That's true. That is kind of interesting. All right, should we jump into the Wolf King and the burning of Prospero?
Ooh, this is going to be a literally hot button topic for some people.
A sensitive topic.
There's nothing wrong. I'll just say it right now. That way we can get it out of the way. I think he did do something wrong, but that's besides the point.
That makes 2 of us.
The Thousand Sons Legion, unlike the savage, untamed space wolves, were consumed by a relentless thirst for knowledge, especially of the warp and its dark sorceries. Their Primarch, Magnus the Red, stood as the towering figure among them, his skin like burnished copper, and his hair like a fiery blaze. His most notable feature, however, was his singular, fierce eye, the other lost to the dark forces he relentlessly pursued. Magnus's strength was said to rival even that of Russ, but his heart was not in battle. No, his passions lay in the pursuit of ancient and forbidden lore, the kind of power that could tear the fabric of reality itself. Yet for all this, his intellect, the Wolf King feared his brother's path, seeing it only as dishonor and corruption. But the Emperor, ever blind to such concerns, dismissed Russ's warnings, for Magnus was a son of the Emperor, and in his eyes a fellow psyker, perhaps the greatest to walk among mankind. You know, I do kind of, to be fair, just going back to our previous conversation, I do kind of get Gnostic vibes a little bit from Magnus the Red, just like a search for like hidden deep knowledge that only he can discover. But anyways,
I get that too, for sure.
As the storm of the Horus Heresy brewed, it was Magnus who first felt the darkness creeping in. Desperate, he sent forth a psychic warning to his father, hoping to pierce the psychic wards surrounding the Emperor's sacred palace. But the message was too strong, too potent, shattering the very protections the Emperor had put in place to guard his most secret works, the opening of the Eldar webway, a doorway to untold power. The psychic disruption was enough to open the gates of chaos, letting the ruinous powers spill into the Emperor's domain and placing Terra itself at risk. In his fury, the Emperor chose not to see the truth, but instead believed it was Magnus who had fallen, and with a heavy heart he sent Russ to bring his brother to Terra, to answer for his defiance. The Thousand Sons had long defied the Emperor's edict, continuing their sorcerous ways even after the Council of Nicaea had forbidden them. Now they were seen as traitors, and the Emperor called upon upon Russ to crush them. Russ, whose hatred of sorcery was as old as his bond with the Emperor, saw Magnus's defiance a betrayal worthy of destruction. With this in his mind, Russ and his legions set their course for Prospero, the home of the Thousand Sons. But as they sailed across the stars, Horus, ever the serpent in the dark, poisoned Russ's mind further. He convinced the Wolf King that Magnus had turned against the Emperor completely, that the time had come to burn Prospero to the ground. In his wrath, Russ turned upon his brother with an unrelenting fury, marching towards the homeworld of the Thousand Sons with fire in his heart. The battle that followed was one of devastation. Prospero, once a shining beacon of knowledge, was reduced to a burning wasteland under the unholy assault of the Space Wolves, the Sisters of Silence, and Imperial forces. Tizca, the City of Light, fell in a storm of fire, its towering pyramids shattered and drowned in ash. The Thousand Sons, despite their wisdom and power, could not withstand the might of Russ's fury. The final clash between the Wolf King and Magnus was a battle of the Titans. Magnus, in his desperation, turned to his sorcery, augmenting his strength in a dishonorable bid to survive Russ's onslaught. This dark and twisted act of cowardice, drove Russ beyond reason. In a violent surge of strength, he lifted his brother high and broke him across his knee, snapping Magnus's back in a single blow. But Magnus, ever the schemer, opened a rift in the warp, calling upon the powers of Chinch, the changer of ways, to whisk himself and the remnants of his legions away from the maelstrom. As they fled, they swore vengeance, their hatred burning brighter than the fires of the broken city they left behind. The grudge between the Space Wolves and the Thousand Sons, forged in the fires of betrayal, would last for millennia, a never-ending war between two once brothers. Those Space Wolves would fight in distant battles across the galaxy. Their role in the grand theater of the heresy would be distant, but the shadow of the grudge would remain, a bitter reminder of what had been lost and of the blood-soaked ground upon which it was born. Interesting.
Lot to unpack there.
I always imagine just like that Batman versus Bane panel, but then just switch it with Russ and Magnus, and there you go.
Yeah, the breaking of the back over the knee. Yeah, 100%.
I imagine that every time. Ah, yes, I was wondering what would break first, your spirit or your body. Oh, wait, both of them did.
Yeah.
I actually was wondering, and this actually does remind me, because I was thinking a little while back, like, I don't see as many, like, Cain and Abel stories, because there's so many in Hollywood and stuff. There's so many Cain and Abel story tropes, of two brothers who like enter into a rivalry. They're once like super close friends, and then they enter into rivalry. This is like the closest thing you see to that. There might be some other examples, but just kind of interesting that this sort of scratches that topic a little bit. Fuzz says in the comments, hey, if after the Council of Nicaea, the Emperor also stopped using psychic powers, then I wouldn't feel so bad for Magnus. Big E should have led by example. Don't disagree there. Don't disagree.
I don't disagree.
I think personally that it was one of those things where, like, if the Emperor stopped using his psychic powers, he would just look like a little skinny dude, like just hanging out, and it just call me the Emperor. It's like you're not very Emperor-like anymore. I don't know about that one.
The skinny man standing up like to these 12-foot tall superhumans is like, hey, what's up, dudes? Yeah, these are my sons here, don't you know?
You do wonder if, like, instead the Emperor, because this was going to happen anyway, but if instead the Emperor just created like a cult around himself and deified himself, if things would have gone a little bit better, like, and just said, like, I'm the only true God, and created a monotheistic instead of atheistic empire. I wonder if that would have tempted other like people to peer into the deep abyss of chaos a little less. But I don't know. It's just a thought.
It's a
you know what? I didn't think about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a thought.
What if he had just embraced it, like, because he scorned the word bearers. What if he was like, those word bearers, they would be onto something. I'm feeling awfully godlike.
Well, but if you think about it too, like especially for the Primarchs, but even Astartes, like the temptation to go into the warp and augment your power, man, that's a little too tempting without any sort of like ideological protection against that, or even if the Emperor like said, I mean, obviously, I guess the Primarchs did have psychic abilities, but I don't know. I just wonder if it would have ideologically guarded against maybe that temptation of chaos a little more if he taught them to believe that there is a God and I am him and you're the sons of God, kind of thing.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Trying to like, where do you, that's kind of like the thing, like, where does he draw the line of science and God? Like, yeah, it's a really good kind of point, Jordan, that I hadn't really thought about before. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, you could also very much lead that into, or how could that be different from saying, like, there is no religion? Like, if you're trying to starve out the chaos gods of worship and try and force religion, well, that's kind of very similar to just a different way of going about. Oh, I am the only God you need to believe in. Well,
yeah.
So it's kind of, six in one hand, half dozen in the other.
That's true. Yeah.
But I mean, that's a very interesting way of thinking about it. Especially like, I know Lord Hammer already did an episode on the Emperor, but I'd like to think that I'd like to see another episode of like all these different theories about, like, did he predict 40K happening? Like, was everything he was doing in preparation for 40K, or did he actually plan the Horus Heresy from the beginning, and that, so on and so forth. I'd like to see an episode with like those kind of fun theories.
Yeah, that would be good. But can we just go back to Magnus and Russ for a quick second?
Yeah, do it.
The fact that Magnus and Russ, like that Russ was just so angry that Magnus was using magic to try and like strengthen himself, that he's just like, you little bitch, I'm gonna break your back now. And then he just like snaps him. And I'm like, I think that's hilarious that Russ is like, you're trying to use magic? Like, I'll teach you magic. And
to be fair to Magnus, he did, like, I think one of the phrases was he punched him so hard he actually exploded one of Russ's hearts. So he got a hit on him. So to give him some credit.
This is true. This is true. But like that's kind of one of those things where I'm like for some reason in my brain, I just look at this whole Magnus fight. He literally breaks his back and he shatters his soul. Magnus's soul is shattered at this point because his body dies and his soul shatters. And I'm like, how is your soul directly tied to your spinal cord? Is that what this is now? Oh no.
Parry this nerd.
Every paraplegic you've ever seen is just a soulless person now. It's like, oh no, stop it.
Paraplegics have no soul. You heard it here first online.
You heard it here first. Yeah. I think one of my buddies is gonna hear that. He's got a spinal injury.
Oh no.
He'll be the first to know.
Yeah, I'm
no.
gonna text him and be like, "You're gonna want to listen to episode 171 or 172."
71.
I can't remember. 71. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh,
You're gonna want to listen to that, buddy. And he's gonna be like, "Why?" And I'll be like, "Just about 50 minutes in, you'll get a treat." Oh man, but it Fuzz. They get a wheelchair, so it's replaced with a machine spirit. Oh no! Oh. We're all horrible people, and I love it.
I'm going straight to the warp for this. Damn.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're all welcome. Oh boy. But to talk more about the warp side of things there, Gerald, let's talk about some rune priests, where they kind of fit into all this. The rune priests have no souls; they're all paraplegics. Rune priests, known in ancient times as the casters of runes, are the fierce and loyal champions of Fenris, wielding the power of the spirits that whisper through the winds and the earth. These warriors are no mere psychers, they are the voice of their homeworld, channeling the untamed fury of Fenris through sacred totems and runes etched upon their armor. In the heat of battle, they wield this power as a weapon, guiding their brothers with storms of power and foresight. Off the field, they guard the wisdom of the Space Wolves, not in books, but in the timeless sagas passed down through their bloodline. Rune priests, in their sacred defiance, do not consider themselves servants of the warp. Unlike others who bow to its power, they believe their strength flows directly from Fenris itself. From the primal spirits that haunt its savage wilderness, this belief is a legacy of the shamanic rites of their ancestors, which have not faltered not once since the dawn of their kind. I really like this because the whole idea of the Space Wolves having these rune priests, I love rune priests. That's such a sick model. For those of you that are listening audio only, there's a really cool rune priest model that they've pulled up on the screen. But I really like the idea of the sagas, like where they don't use true records, right? They only use the sagas of each like a verbal history.
Yeah,
oral history.
Yeah, that is I love that. Adding that as like a cultural tome of theirs.
It's just a little thing, but it makes them really cool.
Yeah.
And I think because if you look at like our history, like real world history, the sagas are written down. Like there's only a few sagas that have been written down, and even then they're like there's stories that have been that, like when you look at the written down sagas from like ancient history, they're really not that ancient, and they're kind of it says that there's like multiple different sagas that nobody knows about. So because they've all been just oral tradition. So I think that's very cool. I think it's a very different piece of history where like the White Scars
we
even write
don't
things down.
we don't even know, like, a lot with our own history, how much like a lot of those myths, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, say, have been like an oral history until they finally started writing it down. It's like hard to know. So
like
Hard to know
Babylonians,
where that is.
Sumerians, Assyrians, like all that
Yeah.
stuff that kind of came before. We barely know a lot about it, so it wasn't until like the ancient Greeks decided to write like their stuff that's why we know as much as we do. But even then, there's still a lot that we don't know. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with these
Oh, yeah.
Norse sagas and whatnot.
But I think that's just a really kind of cool piece that they put in there that allows us to like have like some real world, like, oh hey, I can relate to that. So let's see. Leman Russ, the great and mythic primarch of the Space Wolves, stood among those who opposed the use of psychers during the Great Crusade, calling for the disbanding of the librarius within all legions. Yet when the Emperor decreed the fate of the psychers at the Council of Nicaea, the rune priests stood firm, unyielding, and declared that their power was no gift of the warp, but a force beyond it. They, like the storm seers of the White Scars, draw from the natural might of Fenris, a shield against the corrupting whispers of the Imperium. The rune priests are the keepers of their chapter's history, not bound by ink and parchment, but through the living saga sung in the halls of their people. Every rune priest begins their journey as a skald, learning the tales of a single great company before passing through every company over the course of 12 great years, until they are worthy to stand among the elders and pass on their knowledge to the next. Each saga is a battle hymn, and each rune priest a living archive of the wolf's eternal story. The Festival of the Wolf Time, a grand and brutal contest of strength and will, is held every 12 great years to determine who shall rise as the new High Rune Priest, leader of all rune priests and the guiding force to the Great Wolf himself. During this time, the blood of the strong and the wise is tested in both saga telling and psychic combat. Armed with runic weapons, charged with the psychic might of their ancestors, the rune priests summon storms to blind and scatter their foes. Sorry, 2 seconds, guys. Oh my gosh, that was a cough that I'd been waiting for. Armed with runic weapons, charged with the psychic might of their ancestors, the rune priests summon storms to blind and scatter their foes, and cast runes to glimpse the flow of fate itself. Their weapons, carved from the bones and teeth of mighty totem beasts, are as much a part of them as their very soul. And to aid them in their endless war, many rune priests are bound to the ravens, the choosers of the slain, whose keen eyes see far and wide, bringing tidings and watching over the battlefield from on high. Such are the rune priests of Fenris, the faithful and the mythic, the keepers of ancient power and the defenders of their people. Their saga is eternal, their loyalty unbreakable, and their strength unmatched. The rune priests are sick.
They're awesome.
They're just so cool. So cool.
I love that there's like miniatures for them too, because there's like so many characters and stuff that just don't have miniatures, but I'm glad that they do.
Yeah, and
definitely.
like I've always found the Space Wolf like miniatures that they get, they're always so much more detailed than every other chapter because of how distinct they are. Right? So like Dark Angels and Black Templars and Iron Warriors and Raven Guard, like Black Templars, pretty distinct because it's basically a Catholic Church army. But like besides that, man, they're very, very much the same. Like if you look at like Iron Hands, Raven Guard, Imperial Fists, Ultramarines, they're just all the same but different shades of colors. Whereas like the space wolves are like really truly different. They have fur on everything. They have these rune weapons. They have definitely this very distinct ideology and look, which I think is just way cooler.
Yeah, very much agreed. You have some of the like Blood Angels. I'm not a big fan of the Blood Angels, but even I got to give them like they have the whole vampire aesthetic. They sleep in coffins. They drink blood. Their armor is crimson, like for blood. So a lot
They
of the
also
other
have like
legions.
higher grade armor, like like a lot of their older models and stuff. Like not necessarily the newer stuff, but like the older models all had like sculpted abs and like stuff on them, which was like really you didn't get that anywhere else.
Yeah, because I think like if I'm not mistaken, like the Blood Angels Legion was a lot more artistically inclined. Like there were a lot of hints taken from like Italian Renaissance when creating the like characters for their legion, not to the level of the Emperor's Children as far as like artistry and whatnot, but still very, very cultured and sophisticated with them. But I had a little before I talk about this next battle, I had a small tangent in regards to Rune Priests because people kind of give the Space Wolves a lot of crap for their hypocrisy, and it's not totally undeserved because this whole spirit of Fenris. But I think as of like some of the more recent 40k stuff, there's kind of like there might be actually be something to it. My head canon is, and I know I've brought this up before on previous episodes. When it comes to the warp, you can have other warp entities besides just the big four chaos gods. So maybe to kind of bridge that together a little bit, the Space Wolves do not see it as the warp. But what's to say that there isn't some kind of warp energy or warp entity around Fenris that creates this spirit of Fenris that they believe in and gather their psychic energy from? So it's not chaos, obviously, because that's what most everyone in the Imperium would know. But there's still something to it. Maybe I
Sounding
don't
kind of
know.
heretical there, Gerald.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Inquisitor, this one right here.
Yeah. No, you know what? I think that's actually not a bad like thought process.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this though. The whole idea of them drawing energy from Fenris as like its own thing. I have two thoughts. First thought is yes, I think that is a possibility because if we've seen with like Nurgle and Korn and stuff like that, if you believe in something, it will come to fruition. Like, if you believe in bloodshed and like all these different things, like, and you spill blood, you're going to get blood. If you believe hard enough, it kind of creates and manifests itself in the warp. So I think that's a possibility where it has like almost like it's like the Emperor's light. It's like a beacon where they can pull on that beacon and basically pull the elements out of the warp through that beacon, right? Like oh yeah, see like Fuzz, like it's almost like a warp ley line.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing. Yeah, like the
Mm-hmm.
Fuzz, Grimlore might be right there with you. Fenris has a world soul or is some sort of warp ley line that the planet dampens the corruption of. I think that's a really good point. The other,
Like
so
that.
like that was like 2 points. First, you might be onto something. Second, I don't know, man. The warp corrupts a lot of shit.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, see, the other issue I had was obviously like before, and of course, this also comes from a lot of the Space Wolf haters, but they almost likened it to the orc power belief, or they likened it too much to that. So then it's just like, oh, you're just taking it away from the orcs because all of a sudden the Space Wolves have the power of belief in the spirit of Fenris. They believe it into existence. Well, it's not necessarily that. That was where I just kind of had that idea of like, What if it is something from the warp? They don't see it as that, but it is something from the warp, or like a warp ley line that Fuzz mentioned, but it's not chaos either. So that was my thought process, or my reason behind that thought process. So that way it doesn't take away from the orc power belief. But
No,
Jordan, would you like to weigh in
idea.
on this?
I don't feel like I'm qualified to to say whether this is a good idea or not, but let me call up Christian. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I'm not even
friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even qualified to bring up that thought process, but here I am. So
fair.
I don't know, man. I said paraplegics don't have souls, so you're fine to say whatever. So.
No, I think it's interesting. I'll leave it at that. I think it's interesting. Nothing more, nothing less.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. So I guess since we're gonna table that whole heretical discussion of the spirit of Fenris, let's get back to Russ and Brody. That soulless comment got me.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'll stop bringing it up.
Oh man. Okay. So all right. So souls. Russ definitely has a soul. He's I don't know where I'm going with this. The Battle of the Alaxis Nebula. That's what we're talking about now. That was the worst segue I've ever done. Here we go. After the raise into Prospero, the Wolf King, Leman Russ, withdrew his shattered 6th Legion to the shadowed void of the Alaxis Nebula, where his battered warriors could regroup and lick their wounds. Pun. Yet unknown to the mighty Russ, Horus, the traitorous War Master, had dispatched the 20th Legion, the Alpha Legion, to strike at the heart of the Space Wolves. The Alpha Legion, with its two-faced Primarchs, Alpharius and Omegon, had long nursed a bitter hatred for Russ and his Legion. They loathed his disdain for their cunning ways, their reliance on deceit, trickery, and shadows rather than the glorious, brutal clash of open battle. A clash that Russ had always championed as the way of the true warrior. The Alpha Legion's hatred burned bright, and they sought to delay the Space Wolves' aid to Terra, hoping to keep their brother Legion from the defense of the Emperor's throne. In desperation, Russ sent a cry for help to his brother, Jagatai Khan of the White Scars, hoping the Swift Riders would answer. Yet the Kagan, ever cautious and wise, hesitated. The astropathic messages from Russ were conflicting, full of uncertainty. Was Russ still loyal to the Emperor, or had he too fallen? Until he knew for certain the Khan would remain aloof. He would not risk his forces on such a gamble. With a heavy heart, he wished Russ good fortune, his decision to remain distant a bitter one. Alone in the dark void, Russ faced the weight of fate upon his shoulders. The 6th Legion was scattered, their warriors hunted and cornered by the superior numbers of the Alpha Legion. The Wolf King withdrew to his personal chambers, broken and bereft of his usual fire. His mind swirled with doubt, for he had long served as the Emperor's executioner, but in doing so he had doomed his own brothers to ruin. He was a tool of destruction, and the consequences of his past now bore heavily upon his spirit. This is, I think, the kind of like the turning point where he's realizing, like, maybe this is kind of like not good to be loyal to a fault, almost, or to be blindly loyal. But I also like that because I know Brody and I talked about this in the Khan episode about the Alpha Legion not sure if they were loyal or traitor when dealing with the Khan. Well, they're very much on the traitor side when dealing with Russ. So,
yep.
It was then that Bjorn, the One-Handed, appeared. A rising star among the Space Wolves, Bjorn, a young yet wise pack leader, spoke words that cut through Russ's despair. He reminded the Wolf King of his past glory, of the honor that once filled his heart, and of the great warriors who followed him. With this counsel, Russ found clarity. The 6th Legion was his to lead, and they would not falter. It was not too late to rise again. Under the leadership of First Captain Gunnar Gunhilt, Russ's warriors fought valiantly to break free of the Alpha Legion's iron grip, but the battle was dire. Despite their strength and resolve, the Alpha Legion's superior forces closed in, threatening to annihilate the Space Wolves completely. Gunhilt and his crew sold their lives dearly, buying time for the others who had seen the end was nigh. In the midst of the chaos, the Wolf King emerged from his solitude, his fury reignited. As the battle raged on, the skies above the nebula erupted in war, as a great fleet of dark angels appeared on the horizon. Led by the Ramillies-class Starfort Chimera, the Dark Angels, unaware of the greater galactic treachery, had heard the Space Wolves' call and came to their aid, unsure of which side the Sixth Legion had chosen. When the Dark Angels arrived, they found the Space Wolves still true to the Emperor's cause, and the Alpha Legion was forced to retreat. After the battle's end, Russ and his warriors approached the Dark Angels' commander, Chapter Master Alphalos. The two warriors exchanged words, and Alphalos revealed a grim truth. His fleet had been sent by the regent of Caliban Luther long before the heresy's outbreak. The Dark Angels had been hidden in the Alaxis Nebula, unaware of the galaxy's shaking rebellion. They had received fractured reports, but they had no knowledge of the traitors or loyalists among the Primarchs until the battle was upon them. Captain Ormond, one of their officers, had secretly infiltrated Russ's flagship to discern the truth of the Sixth Legion's loyalty. When he saw the bravery of the Space Wolves in the face of certain death, Ormond had declared them true to the Emperor. Thus, the Dark Angels had intervened, their might helping to turn the tide. In exchange for the aid of the Dark Angels, Russ gave a full account of the treachery of Horus and the chaos sweeping the galaxy. Chapter Master Althalos, saddened by the truth, chose to return to Caliban, while Russ, resolved, set his course for Terra. There, in the shadow of the Imperial Palace, he would face his greatest trial, his brother Horus, the traitor and the ultimate reckoning of the galaxy's fate. The Wolf King could not rest until the Emperor's justice was done, for in his heart he knew that only through blood and fire could the galaxy be saved.
Interesting.
Strong words.
So is this sort of the turning point? This battle is kind of the turning point in Leman Russ's story, you think?
That's kind of what it's shaping itself out to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it is kind of that turning point. I think Russ had been, like you said, loyal to a fault, and then now he's trying to find what true loyalty means. Does loyalty truly mean just listening and following blindly, or does it mean listening and making your own decisions? So
yeah, there's always something to be said about, following the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. Like, you can't always know exactly what the Emperor would want to do. You just have to think, how would the Emperor behave if he was here? And that's like the best you could do.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you're pretty much spot on with that.
All right, let's get into one of the biggest events in the 30K timeline, the Siege of Terra. And this is a quote from Leman Russ. How does Leman Russ sound, by the way? What are your guys' interpretations?
What's your best Norwegian accent?
My best Norwegian accent is like this, though,
Okay. A fortress circumvented ceases to be an obstacle. A fortress destroyed ceases to be a threat. Do not forget the difference. A fortress is built with blood and toil. Only by blood and toil may it be taken. Quote,
sounds like the most horrific, grim fairy tale quote I've ever heard.
Imagine if Leman Russ just sounded like a soft little fairy and like this,
oh man,
skinny little Norwegian man.
I worked in a kitchen when I was like 18, up on an oil field pipeline, and the head chef was this Swedish guy, and you sounded exactly like him. He was, hello, my name is Peter. And I'm like, it's beautiful.
Well, that's how Leman Russ sounds now.
Head canon.
Leman Russ.
Yeah.
It is canon now.
And now we have to apologize not only to cripples but Norwegian and Scandinavian people in general.
Scandinavian people, there you go.
Oh man.
In the
Lorehammer
twilight,
Legal's gonna have their hands full.
yeah, for sure. In the twilight of the Horus Heresy, the final clash was upon the galaxy, and the space wolves, fierce and untamed, were still far from the throne world, battling through the stars in their conquest to reach Terra. They fought through the void with the fury of a storm, their hearts burning with the call to protect the Emperor and his throne. News of their arrival, along with the Ultramarines, was a whisper of hope, a promise that the balance would tip in the favor of the Loyalists. Horus, the traitorous war master, knew the impending arrival of the might of the Space Wolves would crush his rebellion. With his empire crumbling, he resorted to the most desperate of measures. He ordered the Emperor, the very heart of the Imperium, to teleport aboard his flagship, Vengeful Spirit, high above Terra, seeking to end the cataclysmic civil war in one brutal and bloody stroke. It was a gamble, a desperate bid to destroy the last glimmer of hope for the Loyalists and deliver the final blow to the Imperium. But as fate would have it, the legions arrived too late. The battle was already decided. Horus, his forces scattered and broken, lay dead at the hands of the Emperor's own fury. The Blood Angel's Primarch, Sanguinius, noble and valiant, had also fallen, slain by the traitor who had once been his brother. And the Emperor himself, grievously wounded by Horus's betrayal, was left in a state of ruin. His body, once the pinnacle of humanity, was mortally damaged. Only the arcane life support of the Golden Throne could preserve his life. I do just a note on even this whole Siege of Terra, and this is so much Leman Russ, but they wrote it really well. How close Horus and four other Primarchs came to just collapsing the entire Imperium. Like, they were within an inch. They were so close, and they got probably a lot closer than the Emperor ever would have really expected. So pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like like I think as far as like time frame too, the Great Crusade lasted like 200 years or something to that effect.
Yeah.
The Horus Heresy only lasted like 7 years, so it
Right,
only
yeah.
took 7 years. Half of the Primarchs were, and really only 4 of them, like Jordan said, carrying the heresy to just crash it all down.
Yeah.
So
As Rogel
And the fact,
Dorn, sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say also the fact that one of those legions and Primarchs left during the Horus Heresy. Left during the Siege of Terra.
Yeah.
And so it was really only 3.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it came so close with just 3 even. It's like, whoa, okay.
I mean, to be fair, if you have the element of surprise, you always have somewhat of an advantage, right? But even then, I guess the writers wrote how they wrote the story, but
Mhm.
they did start catching. All the other Primarchs started catching on what was going on at some point. But yeah, it is interesting. Okay, we'll continue here. As Rogel Dorn, the stoic and unwavering Praetorian, interred the Emperor within the throne, the fate of the Imperium hung by the thinnest of threads. The Wolf King, Leman Russ, and his brothers would never forget the sacrifice, the bloodshed, and the price of loyalty in that dark hour. Though the Emperor's light was dim, the warriors of the Imperium stood unyielding, for the war was far from over. The wolves of Fenris would hunt on, their loyalty unbroken, their hearts aflame with vengeance. The traitors, knowing their reckoning, no matter the cost. So there we have it. That's his sort of conclusion of the Siege of Terra.
Fantastic. But I'm always curious to see how it would go if all the legions were present. Like, what kind of bloodbath would that be if they were all present during the Siege of Terra?
Yeah. Liar in the comments, LIAR. He says, I'm on book 1 of the Siege of Terra right now, and yeah, they just feel like this is an inevitable slow crawl towards Terra. Maybe because I know it's coming, but mostly the way it's written. Yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
100%. I just finished the last book in the Siege of Terror like a month ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like everything kind of gets written up in and like this great big like throughout 8 books. You're just like, what now and what now and what now, and then the last book you're like,
That's Games Workshop trying to steal your money by making you buy the books, which I would.
I know,
I'm
it's
sorry.
the worst.
I'm doing it. I don't care.
I'm doing it, yeah. And that's like I
I'm a whore.
bit in on their limited edition. I don't buy limited edition anything, but I bought the limited edition Siege of Terror books, like the gold, like the nice leather and like the
Oh, yeah.
gold pages and everything.
Ooh.
So I bought the first one. I was like, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna have all 8 of them and whatever. You think I could get another one? Nah. Like
Oh, no?
they would
They're
sell
sold
out
out?
like
Oh, wow.
instantaneously. So
Crazy.
I have the first one, which is Solar War, and I
Yeah.
have uh I think the third one with Angron, or the fourth one with Angron. Yeah, so but that's all I have, and I'm like, oh man, like
Well, now if you try and buy it on the resale market, it's going to be friggin' expensive too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
yeah.
was looking up some of them, and they're like hundreds of dollars.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's not far off because all the single Primark books are they sold out extremely quickly. And I ended up like they were like what $16 like mark MSRP, at least
Yeah.
in American. But like to complete the collection I had going, like I ended up getting like 5 or 6 of them that were like basically $30 a piece because of like the markup and the resale. And after the Lion had been announced for 40K, his book came out, Lion Son of the Forest, and like his hard copy version sold out literally like the morning it had released in the States. And so I ended up having to go to a resale site and pay like an extra $15 just to get a hardcover copy of that book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She does so
See,
basically all this between Brody, me, and Jordan. GW, make more prints, please. I am
Yeah.
banging my
right?
desk for this.
So Liar in the comments says he pirates all his prints and then binds his books. Wow, that's impressive.
So
You
That's
talk
kind of
about
fun.
dedication.
Yeah, that is
I
like,
actually
can you
my
make me
wife
some? I will
finds
buy
books.
it. Yeah, make me
So
some. I will buy
I'm
them
gonna
off
show
you.
you guys something.
Okay,
Ooh,
sure.
show and tell
Yeah,
with Brody.
I mean, I'm not. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not above pirating stuff. But
Oh, that is
I'm also a
glorious.
collector. Yeah, that is
So
beautiful. Oh my gosh.
That is
this is my
glorious.
wife's birthday present to me from about 4 years ago. She literally like from scratch took all the paper, bound it all it with like twine, got it all printed off with like dwarven text around it and everything like that.
What book is this though?
It's just a notebook. She
Oh,
made
it's
me
a
a notebook
notebook.
for all my
Oh,
army schemes.
oh,
Oh,
sweet.
that is so
And
cool.
it's got a clasp and everything on it, and so she does all sorts of this kind of stuff. And so she just took this and put like jewels on it and like did like dwarven runes. And we went out and bought a bunch of nicer leather, and she's like, anytime you find a book from Warhammer that you really really like, let me know, and I'll just take it apart, bind it, and put like the nice leather with like a hard cover on it. I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, you just get any soft cover and I can rebind it.
You know, I would, if someone were to make like a leather, with that like parchment paper too, that's like
Mm,
uh, it feels like it's old style paper. And
Yeah.
had like instead made like a codex or something. And instead of having like the print pictures, they just had like sketches or something on it. That would be like I would pay you hundreds of dollars for that.
See, that's where like, yeah, I agree. Like stuff like that, you can't put a price on.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. If I get a hold of a bunch of like D&D books, I know who I'm sending them to get them all bound together. Because I've seen
Yeah.
like YouTube videos of like DMs just like getting like all the main D&D books and just smashing them all together into like one ancient looking tome. It's
Yeah.
freaking cool.
Yeah, 100%. And my wife's also like, so she's into more of the spiritual side of things, and she's got a grimoire that
Oh, yeah.
she has, and she's made it so that it's like you can open it in the middle, or you can open it from the front, or you can open it from the back, and it goes to different pieces. So like one section is for all of her herbalism stuff that she works on, one section is for all of her spiritual stuff that she works on, and one section is for like just notes. And so like she's got like this like cool thing where it's I've got to cut some things for her so that she can make it finally, but it's all going to be leather bound and like have like clasps and everything all over it. So
Yeah, there's something about like artisanship, I just
yeah.
appreciate. Like, I don't know, our culture, there's just too much mass-produced crap, and you just don't get enough artisan, But anyway,
100%.
I
I
digress.
get that. I digress.
Or Purge in the comments doesn't count if it's not made from human skin.
It is. I do have Purge. I do have some deer skin that I'm going to get a book bound in that I personally shot and killed
Wow.
and ate and everything. So that's as good. But I can't hunt the most dangerous game, man. So that's about as close as you're going to get is deer. Yeah, liar. Where does she source her long pig leather?
Oh man.
Oh boy. Anyways, let's get back to less tangenty
Get on
things.
track here.
Yeah. Oh man. So we after the the Siege of Terra and kind of all the things that happened there, the Great Scouring kind of happens. So the Great Scouring was a brutal and unrelenting purge that followed the Horus Heresy, where Leman Russ and his space wolves were among the foremost warriors tasked with hunting down the traitor legions. None of the other legions were up to it because they all died, basically. They all got wiped out pretty good. As the traitor forces scattered, the space wolves, driven by unyielding loyalty and fury, tore through the remnants of the fallen, bringing vengeance to those who had once been brothers. Leman Russ led his legion with unmatched ferocity, relentlessly pursuing the traitors across the galaxy, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. His warriors were tireless, their battle cries echoing in the void as they brought the Emperor's justice to those who dared defy his will. However, the Great Scouring was not just a campaign of vengeance, it was the crucible that forged the myth of Russ into something greater, a figure whose fate would remain intertwined with the history of the Imperium, his disappearance after the Scouring remaining a mystery that would never be solved.
Ooh, mystery.
Yeah. So I have a question. Do you guys know, like, I know everybody says the Great Scouring happened after the Siege of Terra. Well, like, okay, how did that happen? Was Russ? I can't remember off the top of my head. Did Russ actually get to Terra, or was that just Gilliman and the Ultramarines, and the Lion and the Dark Angels, or was it all three of them that got to Terra, turned the tide, and then chased everybody off?
Leman Russ did not make it to Terra. Am I
Like at all in any way?
Before Horus and the Emperor's final battle, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
Someone
like,
could fact check me on that. I can't remember though.
Yeah, because I know. Oh, okay. I gotta look it up now. I gotta just.
Yeah, maybe I could be wrong, but
I'm I'm like
We need a
like
Jamie to pull things up.
yeah, I want to
Yes.
say it was because it was the Space Wolves, the Ultramarines, and the Dark Angels. They were en route to Terra during the siege, but they didn't make it until after Horus's fight with the Emperor, if I remember correct. But again, you can feel free to fact check me on that.
Yeah. Purge in this comment says the cryptid story around Dogman makes people scared shitless. And they're talking about Dogman and werewolves are the most dangerous prey. Don't get me started on cryptids, okay?
Uh-oh.
That's a whole nother
The real-
podcast.
Okay, yeah, no, so him and the Lion and Gilliman all got there and basically turned the tide after the siege, after the Emperor and Horus fought.
Yeah, it was after they fought, but the battle, I guess, was still raging. So I guess
So
that makes sense.
They basically got there and turned the tide, and then like chased them after they got
Right.
there. So
yeah, I mean,
cool. Okay,
you gotta purge some heretics once you're done that. You gotta punish them, make them feel the pain.
Comment from Nemo Forever. That's a name I hadn't seen in a while. The Great Scouring seems that the Loyalists kept their forces unified and well led after the Golden Throne. The heretics weren't really unified before Horus fell. It got worse after he did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to beat a team after their best player's killed.
True.
Oh man.
The guilt of killing salamanders plunge him into chaos.
You know what? I do love the salamanders, and I wish they had a larger role in the heresy.
For real.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
good.
They're like my
What do you do?
my salamanders are truly like my second favorite legion. So man, they got dunked on too much.
Yes. I definitely love me some salamanders.
So cool.
Actually, I've got a salamanders dreadnought that I have for my my Death Watch. It's pretty sick. It's got like anvils and fire all over it.
Nice.
But anyways, we do have some other things here with the Space Wolves. They're like the Space Wolves are my absolute they are my favorite legion. I love them as a legion. The white scars are my second favorite. It's kind of like a tie. Like some days I like the white scars more, sometimes I like the wolves more. I think I've said both at one point in time in my life. So, but the white scars are my favorite 40K for sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'd say as far as legions, Space Wolves are my number 3. My top 5 would be Raven Guard, Alpha Legion, Space Wolves, Salamanders, and Luna Wolves. Not Sons of Horus, but Luna Wolves.
How to make that distinction.
Gotta make that distinction.
The loyal version.
The loyal version.
Not the heretic version.
Exactly.
You're not a big fan of the upgrade sprue for that one.
I don't know, something about that, like that Sons of Horus green that just doesn't settle with me. I want that stormtrooper gray and white.
Perfect.
So.
There you go.
And then of course, wolves, Luna wolves. Like, come on, Big E, we surrender. Call off your wolves. So okay. So yeah, like Brody mentioned, there are some other issues that went on after the Scouring, namely Papa Smurf and his Codex Astartes. I can tell you Leman Russ had some thoughts on that. So the Space Wolves were absent when the final battle for Terra was fought, the last war that sealed the Emperor's fate, condemning him to a living death upon the Golden Throne. Afterward, Leman Russ, the Wolf King, seethed with rage for the events that kept him from his sire, the Emperor, tore at his very soul. With the Emperor now bound to his eternal throne, a new age dawned for mankind, one of cold bureaucracy and unyielding order. The Primarchs, warriors born of legend, were thrust aside. The mantle of leadership over the Imperium passed to the High Lords of Terra, men who knew nothing of war's true spirit. Both the High Lords of the surviving Primarchs feared what chaos might rise again. The galaxy trembled as the Scouring began, a time of brutal retribution where worlds burned and the tainted were eradicated. No longer could the Imperium allow itself to risk the corruption of its mighty legions, and so the Codex Astartes was born, a tome written by Gilliman that shattered the Great Legions into smaller chapters. No more could any chapter number in the tens of thousands. Each would be a mere 1,000 warriors, a fraction of their former glory. Some, like the Loyalist legions, would remain as first founding chapters, their names and symbols a legacy of their past. Others would rise anew, born of the surviving brothers, yet forever bound by the blood of their Primarchs. Space Wolves, though, would be divided but once. A tragic experiment gave birth to the ill-fated Wolf Brothers chapter, but Russ cared nothing for the schemes of his brother Primarchs. He was no politician, no bureaucrat. He was a king of warriors, a beast of war, and he would not be shackled by the chains of formalities. His legion, mighty and unyielding, would not be broken further. Though Gilliman had sanctioned the Space Wolves' 12 great companies, still vast and powerful under the leadership of the Wolf Lords, Russ had no intention of altering the way of his wolves. They would fight as the tribes of Fenris had fought, with the savage might and unyielding strength, not as small, disciplined units of well-trained soldiers. And so the Space Wolves ignored the Codex Astartes. Their bond with their Primarch was forged in fire and blood, and Russ's teachings would guide them in battle until the end of time. Their power, their fury would never be matched by any other chapter. Through their defiance, they carved their own path, a path of war and legend. Forever would they stand loyal to the Emperor and to the memory of their fallen king. And if any of you Dark Angels or Black Templars fanboys would like to shit on the Space Wolves for ignoring the Codex, guess what? Neither does your chapter follow it, so hush your mouth.
Harold is like, get my name out your goddamn mouth. Oh man. I do love that Russ was just like, fuck your codex. Like like just screw your codex. I don't want anything to do with that. I'm just gonna have 12 great companies, and if you don't like it, fight me. Oh man.
All right.
I just wanted to get that off my chest because I've heard so many comments about that. I'm like, you shut your mouth.
All right, let's get into a topic of much speculation, the disappearance of Leman Russ. No man knows the true fate of Leman Russ, the Wolf King, for his disappearance is a mystery that has burned in the hearts of his sons for millennia. Some say he vanished into the Eye of Terror, hunting for his ancient foe and comrade, the Lionel Johnson, but others believe he walks still among mankind, disguised in shadow, guarding his emperor's realm against the endless tides of chaos. What is known for certain is that Russ vanished in the year 211 M31, nearly 2 Terran centuries after the emperor's immortal prison was sealed upon the Golden Throne. On that fateful day, the Space Wolves and their Wolf Lords gathered upon Fenris for the feast of the Emperor's Ascension, to honor the victory over Horus and the Emperor's final ascent into the Imperium. It was during this feast that Russ, mighty as he was, fell silent. The great hall of warriors stilled as their Primarch rose to speak, only to freeze in the moment, his eyes glazing over as he beheld some far-off vision. In horror, his warriors watched as Russ fell to his knees and called upon his closest companions, his wolf guard, to attend him, leaving only the young Bjorn, the fell-handed, behind. With his instructions given, Russ departed the hall, his bodyguard following in silence, marching toward the fate unknown. The tale of his departure is retold every 1,000 years by Bjorn, the fell-handed himself, the oldest dreadnought of the Imperium, who bore witness to the Wolf King's final command. Some believe that Russ, driven by a purpose beyond mortal ken, journeyed into the Eye of Terror in search of the Tree of Life, a fabled source of pure warp energy that could restore the Emperor, healing him from his eternal wound and returning him to life. Year after year, the Space Wolves set a place for Russ at the feast. They filled his drinking horn, ever hopeful he would return. 7 long years passed, but the Wolf King did not return. In grief, Bjorn was chosen as the new Great Wolf, leading his warriors on the first great hunt to find their lost father. Across the sea of stars they sailed, seeking Russ on countless worlds, battling monsters and defying odds. Their deeds are sung by the rune priests of Allwinter's Eve, but the search was in vain. Bjorn himself ventured into the Eye of Terror, only to be grievously wounded and entombed within the adamantium shell of the dreadnought. Yet still no trace of Russ was found. The first great hunt ended in sorrow, but the Space Wolves did not falter. They went forth again, and the second hunt brought them to the temple of Horus on the world of Rudra, where they recovered the armor of their lost Primarch. The fourth hunt uncovered the Corellian conspiracy, striking down a traitorous plot to overthrow the Imperium. The ninth hunt saw the destruction of the gene-stealer-infested world of the Gehenna system, but still Russ eluded them. Over countless hunts, the Space Wolves have won victory after victory, each one guided by visions of Russ speaking through the rune priests, sending his sons on quests with wisdom passed from their father's mind to theirs. Yet none have found him. But hope endures, for Russ has spoken to them still, his final words echoing through the ages. He will return. He will return to lead his sons in the final battle against the forces of chaos, a battle he called the Wolf Time. Many believe that the time is near. The Imperium stands on the edge of doom as the forces of destruction gather for the final assault on mankind. The Wolf King will rise again, and when he does, the enemies of mankind shall tremble. These are the last words of Leman Russ. Listen closely, brothers, for my life's breath is all but spent. There shall come a time far from now when our chapter itself is dying, even as I am now dying, and our foes shall gather to destroy us. Then, my children, I shall listen for your call in whatever realm of death holds me, and come I shall, no matter what the laws of life and death forbid. At the end I will be there, for the final battle, for the wolf time. Ow!
That accent, though.
That is definitely how Leman Russ sounds.
It's
It is
canon.
canon.
Yeah.
It's canon now.
Oh my god. It just gives me absolute flashbacks to when I was 18 in camp working for that guy. Like, Brody, where are you getting the bacon from? It's just that's all I can think of. Oh my god.
What was that? What was that one
Oh.
song? Crap. I can't think of the name of the song, but it always starts with Unten Gleben, Glauten Globen.
Oh yeah, that one, yeah. Oh man. Um I'm telling you right now, I keep seeing that Space Wolves were announced at Adepticon. I'm telling you right
Ooh.
now, if they bring back Space Wolves, they've got to bring back Leman Russ here in the next little bit.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's only a matter of time. We just got Demon Fulgrim, and
Yeah,
for me, it was either going to be the Khan or Russ to come back next. In my mind, it was going to be one of those.
yeah. I think you're right. I think it's either going to be Khan or Russ, but I honestly, I just think it's going to be Russ. I want it to be Jagatai Khan. Genghis. I don't want Genghis Khan to come back. He's going to depopulate the world again. But Jagatai, if Jagatai Khan came back, I'd be super pumped. But I don't think there is the popularity needed, or the personality that they've put into the models, like Space Wolves, Dark Angels, and Ultramarines have all been very highly modeled over the years, and they all have their own thing. So I think those guys are always going to get first shot. Down the road, like 3-4 years, 5 years, maybe they might do a con. But I honestly think with the announcement of Space Wolves at Adepticon right now, we're going to see a Leman Russ model sooner rather than later.
All right. Now this is going to come to my question for you guys. Oh yeah, because this is going to come to my question for you guys, and then for our call-ins, what would you like this 40K Russ to be?
Ooh, I'll think on that. I'll think on it. Let's discuss it afterwards. I think that's a really great.
Yep. Mark, our whisper from the warp brings up a good comment.
Yep. Werewolf. I think you guys might not be too far off with that.
Yeah.
But speaking of Leman Russ and him having a model, he has a personality. and how would his personality reflect in his model? That's my big question. How would I envision this model, and how does his personality kind of like work with that? Leman Russ, the Primarch of the Space Wolves, was Leman Russ, the Primarch of the Space Wolves, was a figure of raw power, loyalty, and untamed ferocity during the Great Crusade. Known for his unyielding strength and unbreakable will, Russ was the embodiment of martial prowess. He was fiercely protective of his legion, leading them into battle with the savage loyalty of a wolf to his pack. Russ's personality was marked by a deep sense of honor, often displayed in his interaction with his brothers and subordinates. His approach to warfare was brutal, relying on swift, overwhelming attacks that reflected his no-nonsense attitude towards victory. Despite his ruthless tactics, Russ held a personal code that respected the bonds of brotherhood and loyalty above all, which made him a steadfast ally to his father, the Emperor, and the Imperium during the early years of the Great Crusade. However, the events of the Horus Heresy and the subsequent aftermath left Russ scarred and forever changed. During the heresy, his loyalty to the Emperor was tested to its limits as he grappled with the betrayal of his fellow Primarchs and the bitter realization that Horus's rebellion threatened everything he held dear. Russ was consumed by the need to protect the Emperor, even if it meant going to extremes. After the heresy, Russ withdrew from the galaxy's center stage, disappearing into the Eye of Terror, seemingly to track down and deal with the traitor Lorgar in a bitter and unfinished quest. The emotional toll of the heresy, combined with his guilt over not preventing Horus's fall, left Russ a broken figure, haunted by the choices made and the brotherhood lost. While he remained a symbol of strength, his later years were defined by isolation and an ever-deepening rage toward those who had turned against the Emperor and the Imperium. Attributed to Leman Russ at the Battle of Rising Fell. Here I am, and here shall I die. Oh no.
Oh boy.
I've joined Jordan on this heretical quest to sound like Leman Russ.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
I think if Leman Russ had a model, his personality really, like what Mark has put down in the notes here, I think is perfect for how to display a model. If you look at Reboot Gilliman was in stasis, right? So he like didn't age really. And the Lion did age. because he wasn't really in stasis, right? Because Leman Russ has been in the warp for whoever knows like how long, like almost 10,000 years. And he was a broken figure who had resentment and bitterness in his heart. Like when he went in there, I think you're gonna see not like a true werewolf like kind of idea that like Mark had said. I think you'll see a Primarch that is like almost gaunt in feature. Like he'd have like sunken in cheeks, a like furrowed brow, always scowling, all his teeth always bared, like, and you would just see like this unrelenting bitterness and like us, like you know how the lion's like walking and like kind of like out like has like his sword and everything like he's about to get ready to like go into a duel. I think it would be Leman Russ like leading with his head and like his like sword behind him like ready to like strike kind of thing, but like just walking forward. And it's like I think that's what it would be a really cool idea of like what he would look like, because it actually embodies his personality.
I like that idea. I'm going to add to it and
Yeah.
keep the gaunts like furrowed older appearance. Make him look grizzled, like pseudo werewolf, like maybe if you wanted to give him a more humanoid appearance, but also maybe like give him like that Odin quality. You know, we've been like this entire like these past couple of episodes on Russ and the Space Wolves, like this is very much obviously riffing off of like Norse mythology and
Sort of
Norse
Viking.
sagas.
Yeah.
Viking, yeah. So it's just like this very much. This would be. I would be very disappointed if they didn't do like a humanoid Russ model and make him like very Odin coded, because I think the Emperor is like called the Allfather or something by the Space Wolves.
Yeah.
So it would just make too much sense.
I don't hate that idea. Almost an apotheosis. Like I do get a sort of like vibes similar to how with Leman Russ, it sort of rhymes with what is going the dynamic with the Emperor. Like he's not, is he dead or is he not really dead? He's kind of dead, but no one really knows. But they're just as like this mystery surrounding him, and there's sort of like similar vibes going on with Leman Russ. And I almost agree with that. Like he kind of comes back. He would have to come back very mythical for sure, more mythical than a typical Primarch. And you could either do that in like a werewolf, or you could, like you were saying, like an Odin coded, as you said.
Odinified. I love it.
Yeah.
Also, I'm just looking through some of the new Space Wolf models on the Adepticon like preview. Yeah, this is dangerous for me. This is so dangerous.
I'm glad.
I love all of these models. These are sick looking.
Oh no! I'm glad I'm not looking at them right now because I'll be very tempted. I'll be extremely tempted.
But like this is the whole like, you know how like we were talking about like the color scheme of like the Space Wolves. It's changed again. It went from like this weird baby blue back in like the early 2000s to like kind of a grayish blue to now it's like but it had like light areas of gray and like going into like some baby blue like in other portions, and now it's like this weird dark kind of blue. Yeah, it's an odd color.
I'll have to look at
so
that.
Yeah, it's just it, but yeah, like they do look really cool. Like the Wolf Guard head takers, really cool kind of like Blade Guard style unit, looks really neat. And they have a whole bunch of like Blood Claws and Gray Hunters, and they also, like we were talking about before, with Rune Priests, they have Wolf Priests as well. These are the chaplain style models. So they've come out with a new Wolf Priest, and I think you'll probably see a Rune Priest and maybe a Leman Russ model down the road.
Very possible.
But,
very possible.
So I like what you guys both added to that kind of like Leman Russ coming back as like Odin and like that kind of like Odinification of him, and it's really cool. It's an idea for sure.
Yeah, granted, that's just like my personal thought process. It would definitely be interesting if they did like that full on werewolf or wolfen type of Russ. The only reason I don't think they would do that is because they already made a point of Corvus Corax being this demon bird type thing right before he disappeared. So I'll say when for Jax's sake, they bring Corvus Corax back, I would be very interested to see if it's going to be his demon bird form. But that's neither here nor there at this point. So while we're on the subject of like what kind of like what's Russ going to look like, we can also call motherfuckers.
Jax, I love when some of the comments, man. Call, motherfuckers. Perfect.
Oh man. So all right, so we're talking about like how we'd like to see a Russ model, but he does have some war gear, and I don't know if that's going to come back with him for 40K, but one of them real quick is called the Kraken Maw. Was the original primary weapon of Leman Russ, a massive and ornate frost blade renowned for its brutal power. Its teeth were forged from the remains of a Fendrisian kraken, giving the weapon an otherworldly and fearsome appearance. As a symbol of Russ's ferocity and dominance in battle, lost my place. Give me just 1 second. Okay. As a symbol of Russ's ferocity and dominance in battle, Kraken Maw was more than just a weapon. It was a part of the Primarch's very identity. However, during the Night of the Wolf, Angron shattered Kraken Maw, leaving the weapon broken and its legacy stained by the horrors of the heresy. In the aftermath, Leman Russ replaced Kraken Maw with the legendary Frostblade Mjolnir. Ha 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 ha. I see what you did there, GW. But the legend of Krakenmaw continued to haunt his legacy, forever a reminder of the brutal conflict that defined the Primarch's path. And then of course the totally not Mjolnir ripoff, Mjolnir, the sword of Balin Right. Mjolnir, the weapon of Leman Russ, is an ancient and dread artifact. Its origins lost in the mists of time. In Terran tongues, it has been called Balin Right, a name steeped in the dark legends of the Age of Strife, passed between tyrants and warlords who carved their names in the blood of their enemies. But to the sons of Russ, it is always Mjolnir, the fang of the Wolf King, a weapon won in the fires of battle, a prize of conquest that carries with it the legacy of Fenris itself, a power sword of unimaginable strength. Mjolnir strikes with a blade of that darkens as it kills, first staining red with blood, then black as the soul is consumed. It is a weapon forged not only to tear through armor, but to rend the very spirit, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake.
I mean, I do appreciate that GW pulls from like real world culture, but this is just a little on the nose.
Subtlety wasn't always their strong suit.
Yeah, Mjolnir. Obviously, like Thor's hammer is called Mjolnir. Yeah, very, very big thing in Norse mythology. So
The Mjolnir versus Mjolnir.
yeah, yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. I never pictured Russ as like as a sword guy though. That was kind of like that always like for me like all the Primarchs had like specialty weapons, right? Like Vulcan had his hammer, and like Sanguinius had his spear and his sword, and like they all kind of had specialty weapons. I always thought that Russ should have had like a great axe.
It's funny
Like,
you mentioned
personally.
that because the Russ model that I have, he's dual wielding. I think it's like Frostfang and a great axe.
Yeah.
But don't tell GW this, but that's a third party model.
You bad boy.
Of course. Yeah.
I don't disagree with you there. I think yeah, an axe is almost more suiting, but
C'est la vie, I guess.
yeah, here we are. Here we are. And on
Okay,
that
so
note, we'll talk about his combat abilities. Leman Russ is undeniably one of the best fighters among the Primarchs. a title earned through his unparalleled martial prowess, instinctive battle leadership, and brutal effectiveness of his combat style. His ability to engage in close-quarter combat with unmatched ferocity, wielded his iconic weapons like Krakenmaw and Mjolnir, set him apart from many of his brothers. Russ's skills were not just about strength, but also about a deep understanding of war, honed from his time on Fenris, where survival itself required brutal ingenuity and constant confrontation within the wild. His battle tactics reflected his wild and untamed nature, swift, overwhelming, and relentless, allowing the Space Wolves to dominate the field. Beyond his combat abilities, Russ's leadership in battle was second to none. He fought alongside his brothers and his legion with an unyielding loyalty, inspiring the Space Wolves to fight with the same untamable spirit that defined their Primarch. His prowess in personal combat was evidenced during key battles, such as the Siege of Terra, where he fought against his traitorous brothers with sheer might and determination. Even when faced with impossible odds, Russ never backed down from a fight, and his reputation as a warrior who could take on any foe, from the traitorous Horus to the monstrous creatures of Fenris, solidified his place among the greatest fighters of the Imperium's history. His strength, courage, and relentless fighting spirit ensured his legacy as one of the greatest warriors ever to walk the galaxy. Leman Russ fought several of his fellow Primarchs during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, with some of the most notable encounters occurring during the betrayal of Horus and the civil war that followed. Here are the key Primarchs he fought, starting with...
Before we do that, Jax is on fire with the comments in regards to the sword thing. Lion, you have my sword. Sanguinius and my spear. Corvus and my claws. Leman and my axe.
It's, if only that were canon. Unfortunately, it's not. So get out of here, Jax.
Sadly, not canon.
It's canon it's canon in our hearts.
Leman Russ, number one in your hearts. Oh man. Yeah, so Leman Russ's favored fights of other Primarchs go with the Lion. A particularly personal confrontation occurred between Russ and the Lion, the Primarch of the Dark Angels. Their relationship was fraught with tension, and their clash during the Great Crusade reflected this animosity. The two Primarchs disagreed deeply over strategy, honor, and leadership, often exchanging sharp words, which eventually culminated in a violent confrontation. While neither side emerged victorious in their brief but intense fight, it solidified the strained relationship between the two. But neither side emerged victorious in their brief but intense fight. Dude, it was like 3 days of them fighting.
I guess in the scale of like
Warhammer scale of the universe.
Yeah, it's like pretty low. But yeah, that is a long fight, a long single continuous battle.
I'm sure for a Primarch, 3 days of straight fighting is nothing. So
yeah, that's true.
That's fair. Yeah. Horus Lupercal, the War Master and leader of the Traitor Legions. Horus was perhaps Russ's most significant adversary during the Horus Heresy. Russ and his Space Wolves fought against Horus's forces during the Siege of Terra, though their direct confrontation was complicated by Russ's loyalty to the Emperor and the ultimate outcome of the heresy. Did he actually fight Horus?
Earlier in the heresy, he actually did get a chance to fight Horus, but obviously,
right. I remember that book now.
Yeah, but Horus was too juiced up on warp magic, and then Russ was kind of hesitant. Was like, it says he was kind of hesitant to kill his own brother, although, like, okay, why was Magnus different? But that's a whole other thing. So,
yeah.
Oh, Elias says he stabs him with the spear of the Emperor. So going back to that whole Odin thing, because one of Odin's big weapons was a giant spear. So, but yeah, that was, so he did actually fight Horus, but he was conflicted about killing him or not so obvious, and so it just kind of led to kind of like a stalemate of sorts. But now he did also fight. I want to say this for my buddy Toasty's sake. The other greatest fighter of the Emperor's Children, Angron. During the Night of the Wolf, Russ faced Angron, the brutal leader of the World Eaters. The two Primarchs fought in a fierce battle that led to the breaking of Russ's weapon, Kraken Maw, by Angron. Their clash was one of the most brutal encounters between two Primarchs, showcasing the savage nature of both warriors. And that was kind of Russ wasn't necessarily trying to kill Angron. He was trying to be put to heel because of how brutal the World Eaters were. But Angron was just like, fuck this, I want to die. So that also led to like a major stalemate because like Angron had, okay, if you ask each side, they'll each say they won. But as far as the official lore goes, if I remember correctly, Angron won one-on-one against Russ. But in doing so, he was surrounded by other Space Wolves who were ready to basically shoot to kill if Russ had fallen. So, semantics.
There's not very many Primarchs that can best Angron. Let's be real here.
No, I mean, I love Russ, but I will say Angron is probably the better fighter, the best fighter out of all of them, just because of his upbringing, because of the butcher's nails, and because he don't give a fuck.
He's okay getting stabbed if it means he gets to stab you.
Exactly. So, and then Magnus the Rad. While not as direct as the others, Leman Russ was part of the force that attacked Magnus and the Thousand Sons on Prospero. The Wolves led the assault as part of the Emperor's directive to stop Magnus's dangerous use of psychic powers. Russ and his legion were key participants in the destruction of the Thousand Sons' homeworld, with Russ harboring a deep animosity towards Magnus for his perceived betrayal. To kind of elaborate on that, like the whole order that Horus kind of swapped to make it look like, oh, the Emperor wants Magnus dead. Russ would have been the perfect one anyways, because they never got along well to begin with. So it wasn't that much of a stretch for Russ to say like, oh, kill him. Okay. But to be fair, he did try to make contact with Magnus first during the assault on Prospero, just to see what the heck was up. And Magnus was the one that said, no, I'm too busy repenting. Stop. And so that was what led to the whole thing. So Russ did try to reach out and parlay with him first. Just saying.
Fair. All right, let's get the next fight is Lorgar Aurelian. While Russ didn't directly duel Lorgar, he was one of the Primarchs actively hunting down and punishing the traitors during the heresy. His role in fighting Lorgar's forces was part of his larger commitment to the Emperor's cause, though his personal interactions with Lorgar are less detailed than with Horus or Angron. So, in conclusion, these confrontations highlight Russ's role as a fierce and unyielding force during the heresy, where he engaged some of the most powerful and treacherous of his brothers. Yeah, so he wasn't playing around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being a loyal dog of the Emperor, as the traders would say.
I want to give us some time for call-ins because we're like just over 2 hours now, so we can kind of breeze through this next part with the legacy of the Wolf King. But I do want to kind of highlight, we were talking about shamanism before earlier in the episode, so I will talk about this part. Russ's legacy also gave rise to the Wolf Priests, part healers, part spiritual guides. These warriors act as a combination of priests, shamans, and battlefield medics, ensuring the Space Wolves retain their warrior identity even in times of peace. This mix of warrior spirituality and brutal combat effectiveness was a legacy of Russ's understanding that a warrior's spirit is as vital as their body. So that was the whole shamanism thing that we were talking about. And I know Jordan Brody, there's a couple of things. So if y'all wanted to bring those up as well, we can, or we can just go ahead and skip straight to the call-ins.
Well, we can do a few more notes, but yeah.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
All right, so let's go the Codex Astartes and the Space Wolves rejection. After the Horus Heresy, the Codex Astartes, created by Reboot Gilliman, was meant to regulate the structure and organization of the Astartes. However, Russ, like many of his brothers, rejected its rigid structure, choosing to preserve the Space Wolves' unique way of war. This defiance is a direct result of Russ's leadership, and his understanding of the Space Wolves' strength came from their wild, untamed nature. The Great Hunt and Quest for Glory. Russ's Great Hunt is another cornerstone of his legacy, where the Space Wolves continuously hunt for the greatest threats to the Imperium, especially those that lurk beyond the sight of the Emperor. It has become a central aspect of their purpose, emphasizing their role as the vanguard against the darkness of the unknown. Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
Ba-bum. Super sweet. I actually love the idea of the Great Hunt, and like they always just like are lurking. They're always looking for the stuff that the Emperor can't see. I do like that. It's quite a cool concept. Defending the Imperium. Russ's legacy also lies in the Space Wolves' unwavering commitment to the Imperium. Despite their occasional rebellion or defiance, the Space Wolves have always been there to answer the call to battle, especially in times of dire need, such as during the Siege of Terra. They were among the most loyal of the Emperor's legions, even though they frequently worked outside of the typical Imperial structure. Their loyalty, despite their methods, continues to solidify their place in the Imperium's defense. The disappearance of Leman Russ. The mystery of Leman Russ' disappearance is another part of his legacy. He vanished during the final days of the Great Crusade, leaving behind only cryptic messages. This has created a sense of duty among Space Wolves to continue the search for their lost Primarch, fostering a sense of unity and devotion to Russ's memory. This search, known as the Quest for Russ, remains as the most important part of their ongoing narrative, symbolizing both hope and uncertainty. I think there was just a typo on that one. He vanished during the final days of the Scouring, not the Great Crusade.
Yeah.
And in summary,
Yeah.
Leman Russ left behind a legacy of indomitable spirit, fierce loyalty, and a warrior culture that has shaped the Space Wolves into one of the most unique and feared legions in the Imperium. His impact was not only on his legion, but also on the broader Imperium's ability to face its many foes.
Nice. All right, guys, we're
Fantastic.
gonna jump into some calls real quick to try and get through all of these because we got a few people waiting. We'll start with Jax. Are you good to go, buddy?
Great.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Well, who did GW pay? First, it
For
was
what?
the Emperor's Children episode, and then getting Emperor's Children models. Now it's the Space Wolves. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know, man. I think Mark's maybe got some strings that he's able to pull at that GW marketing team. Yeah, I'm gonna come up with an episode. You best have some models for me. Mark, I've
I
always
want to
been a
start.
diviner GW.
I don't want to
Glorious.
start a Space Wolves army, but you guys are making it so hard.
I know. I listened to your many thousands of points of many armies there, Jack.
I'm broke. That's all I can say.
I could trade out some stuff for I bet you I could sell a bunch of my Tyranids and I could get me some Space Wolves. Yeah, let's get another power armor army. Let's do that.
Fantastic.
Hey, Jax, I got a question for you. What do you think about Leman Russ and his rejection of the Codex Astartes? What does that kind of say about his leadership to you? Like, what's your opinion on that?
I kind of think it definitely makes him more of a now guy instead of a think of the future, because Gilliman's whole thing was, oh, we must limit the legions from what was once millions to like 1,000. Well, I might be over exaggerating the millions, but of course that was what like made the Horus Heresy so like poignant, because you had thousands of Marines going at each other. But then after the Horus Heresy, Gilman writes up the Codex. Leman's like, "This sucks, man," and like you kind of gotta agree with him, because like your empire just got cut in half in terms of soldiers, and then that half was cut in another half because of all the killing, and now you got four gods, a bunch of demons, Xenos on all sides, and you're internally falling apart because of cults everywhere. And Lehman's like, "Fuck you, Gilliman. Let's do this."
But not to mention too, like numbers wise, I can't remember the exact number, but like by the end of the heresy, the Space Wolves only had like maybe the tens of thousands, like basically 1,000 for each of their great companies, which there were like 12 or 13 at that time. The Ultramarines and the Imperial Fist had like hundreds of thousands. So
Yeah.
for them, that
I
kind of
think-
makes sense. But for the Space Wolves, and I think like the Salamanders and Raven Guard, who are already small to begin with, that just didn't make too much sense in their mind.
Yeah. Also, speaking of the
Makes
Raven
sense.
Guard, but one of my favorite like Primarch relations is Leman Russ and Corvus. Because from the get-go, they're just bros. Like Leman teaches Corvus how to speak Fenrisian. They work together. And then at the very end, the line was all riding up on Corvus for like, oh, your legion all died. You use like demon marines. Or actually, no, he didn't know that part. I lied. But Lion was giving Corvus a hard time, and then Russ actually stood in for Corvus because prior to that, Corvus saved his life. But like, it's such like a cool, like, complex relationship between like Primarchs, which we never really get.
Yeah. It was funny when you said the other thing where you're like, hey man, this sucks. All I could think of was like Leman Russ being like a surfer bro and being like, man, Gilliman, you're harshing my mellow, bro. Stop it.
Ride the
That's all I
Fenrisian
could think
waves,
of.
bro.
But that's not how Leman Russ sounds. He sounds like this, like a nice
Yeah.
Norwegian man.
You're really harshing on my mellow there, Probute.
Just
Oh,
Canadian Leman Russ just walks into the Imperial
Yeah.
Palace with like maple syrup and like the Canadian flag.
Well, then he would
Love it.
sound. Then he would sound like this, hey. He wouldn't really put up with any of that. None of that. Okay.
I'll tell you right
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
now. You're gonna come into my fucking house and tell me how to raise my fucking legion. I'll tell you what, bud. I'm gonna go have a dart, and you better be gone by the time I get back.
Yeah, that's
That's
Canadian.
exactly what it'd be like.
Starts burning Magnus's homeworld, like walks up to him and is like, "Hey Magnus, how's it going, bro?" Doesn't
Hey,
So
dude.
is the burning of Prospero just the War of 1812?
Oh,
I mean,
That'd be kind
Kind
of
of.
sweet. I like it. I like the idea.
Be kind of
Oh,
sick.
man.
Oh,
Did,
man.
Jax, did you have any other questions or comments about this episode?
I mean, I guess one question is like thoughts on like Leman Russ returning to like the actual setting. Like I know what like we talked about what it would look like and like his weapons and like maybe what he would somewhat do. But like what are your guys' like actual thoughts on like here's another loyalist Primarch coming back?
I mean, I feel like they set it up for him to come back. They set up the mystery, like they bait you into wanting him to come. Oh, what happened to Leman Russ? So like obvious. I don't know. It seems like it's an obvious pathway to go, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think
I like to think the Emperor just like chucked his femur bone into the warp and Leman Russ just dashed after it.
best boy. I think they opened up the floodgates when they brought back Gilliman, but I like the way that Jordan kind of mentioned is like when it comes to Russ, everything lines up to him eventually coming back. like the whole wolf time, legally distinct Ragnarok and all that stuff. We got the galaxy torn in half by the Cicatrix Maledictum. So what better time for Russ to come
Legally
back? So
distinct. Correct.
All right, and
Thank
last question for Jax, and Ersatz brought this up. Jax's nose plaster is getting more and more impressive. so
Surgery does that to you.
Oh, you got surgery. Sorry to hear that, brother. Are you okay?
Oh, good feeling. Hey, yeah, I'm getting better.
All right, sweet.
Good to hear, buddy.
All right, well, I think we'll move on. See you later. Bye.
take care.
Okay.
I also think that
Next
the
up,
Space Wolves are one
Go
of the
ahead.
only people, one of the only like legions that would be like, hell yeah, brother. Like I don't know why, but it just seem like those people.
Glorious.
All right, next up we have Nemo Forever. Are you ready, bud?
Hey, people, Heretic here.
Oh no.
Oh no, eh?
Oh, hey, bud.
You fuck a boot, you find do.
I love it.
Excuse me. We're not even Canadian anymore. We're American. We are the 51st state. So
Hey, you give me that constitutional open carry, and I'll be a very happy man.
me too.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So what did you think
Oh,
about the
man.
episode? Any thoughts, concerns you had?
You have clever Primarchs, such as the Alpha Legion, who have to pretend to not be Primarchs to get their shit done. And then you have unimpressive Primarchs, like the Space Furries, where they have to pretend that they are Primarchs. Because I personally believe that if you were to take Leman Russ and replace him with any Wolf Legionnaire, you would not be able to tell the difference between the original article and a regular Astartes in terms of behavior. You could not tell the difference.
In terms of just behavior, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, you could take Leman Russ
Maybe.
and replace him with any of his legionaries. You could not tell the difference.
Wow, that's a strong opinion there.
And then
I
everyone has
don't
to
know that
pretend.
I agree though.
Well, I don't have strong opinions for you to agree with me. I have them telling me that I'm wrong, so we can have a nice, fun conversation.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I don't know. What do you
I don't know
guys
about that
think?
one.
Do you think his personality is he's just interchangeable with basically any other Primarch?
Any other Primarch or any other Space Wolf?
Space
There's
Wolf.
a big difference.
Oh, sorry, Space Wolf.
Okay, that's what I thought. Well, I mean, okay, he's their Primarch, he's their gene sire, so a lot of what their behavior comes from probably came from him. So in a way that makes sense. Like,
But
I'm saying the Alpha Legion does
Nemo's
it on
point,
purpose.
to Nemo's point, they did just replace him with the Space Wolf named Bjorn.
But is Bjorn
Yeah.
like a Primarch, like, friggin'
No,
12
he's just a
feet
Space
tall?
Wolf.
Like, yeah. So there's some differences.
Like, there's a difference, but like, they did just be like, "Yo, Bjorn, you the next best thing, big boy." And he's like, "You know what? You're right. I am the next best thing. I'm gonna be the next Great Wolf."
All right, Nemo, I got a question related to all this. Why did Leman Russ choose to leave the Imperium at the height of the Great Crusade, at the height of the Scouring, not the Great Crusade? And what does his disappearance symbolize in the broader narrative of the Space Wolves and the Imperium? Since we're talking about replacing him with any other legionary.
All right, write it down in your calendar, because I'm only going to say it once. This is the one time I agree with the Space Wolves. I'd have left the Imperium at that time too, personally, Primarch or not. There's a couple like high tide and low tide points where it doesn't really matter who you are. I personally believe there's not much of a difference you could have made for the Imperium's path. So if he wanted to gracefully bow out with minimal fuss, it's not a real bad time for it. Because once you reach like a certain scale on the logistics, on the size and impact and movements of legions, of armies, of titans, of the navies, like all of the resources, all of the assets, all of the decision-making capability of Imperium, there's particular points in the history where it doesn't really matter what you do, you can't change the path. Like when the Heresy reached a certain high tide, no. When the Scouring reached a high tide, no. When Goga Van Dyer's nonsense reached its high tide, there was only one way it was going to end. So it's like, it feels like the most inoffensive way GW could have just removed him from the story, and the most you can really reasonably do for it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against shit talking in an unreasonable way. Even I can't fault it.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty solid there. I won't argue that.
Fuck. I think I might have gotten an undergraduate's degree in being not wrong. I won't say I'm right.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
I want a graduate's degree in not being wrong.
Here's my certificate. I wrote it in crayon.
Perfect.
Did you
Perfect
eat your
valid certificate. Let me
crayons,
see here.
though?
It says I can do whatever I want.
I can read, unlike a certain Imperial Fist Primarch.
Love it.
Man. Glorious, glorious.
All right. Did you have any other questions or comments about this episode that you wanted to bring up?
It was fun. I was just going to lurk and not say anything in the chat, but shit talking with Jax and just shit talking was just too much fun to resist.
Well, he needs it. He definitely needs it.
Oh, fuck. Like, shit talking with Jax is a fantastic pastime. I'm surprised I don't do it more often.
Absolutely.
We got to play more opportunity too. So
I guess. I mean, you're definitely not wrong. It's definitely enjoyable.
I too earned a degree in not being wrong. So
All
Love
right.
it.
Well, thanks for calling in, man. We'll talk to you next time.
Pleasure, lads. Have a good evening.
have a good one.
Me too.
See ya. Okay, we'll do one last quick one. We got Liar. He's been waiting ever so patiently.
Oh,
What a good
Yeah.
man Liar is.
Now, is it
Welcome.
Liar, or because you have a space between the letters, is it Liar?
It's just liar. That's fine.
Okay.
What's up, boys?
Not much. How are you?
Great. I just gotta say, fuck Magnus. Fuck Magnus. You know,
good man, good man.
Got a lot of that tonight.
No, great episode. Fucking, I love the Space Wolves. They're so fucking. They're like Viking nerds, and it's great. Like fucking. My favorite thing, you didn't really mention it. Like when one of them dies, they have someone who tells all the stories together, and like they go to that person, they tell their story with that person who died to the guy who's going to recite it back, and then like that person has to tell every single story back at the wake thing they do. It's fucking great.
It's
Oh.
it's the Skald thing. So they have a Skald that goes around and finds the stories for every
Yeah.
past Space Wolf. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like they don't even care if the stories are very true. They just have to be good.
As any good saga would. So
Yeah. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Exactly. Oh man.
Oh God, it's hot.
So, Liar, you really like the Space Wolves. What do you think about like their like Leman Russ's like brutal and savage nature and how he balances it with like honor and loyalty? How does that like kind of that duality manifest it in the Space Wolves of today?
I don't know much about the 40K Space Wolves, but I mean a lot of that from Russ is a facade. Like he's playing it up for the Space Wolves. He's playing up his savagery and everything like that because he's actually really fucking smart and really well spoken and everything like that. Like it seems like a lot of it's just him doing it for his Legion,
he's acting like the big dumb jock when he's actually secretly a nerd too.
Exactly. But not like a Magnus nerd. Not that fucking book nerd shit.
Well, Jackson, the comment previous caller is now saying he's fighting words. Magnus did nothing wrong.
Look at the wording of that.
Because he couldn't do nothing. like he was supposed to. That dumb
Thank
bitch.
you, thank you. He was told to do nothing, and he still did that wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you can't
Magnus.
do nothing right, there's something seriously wrong with you.
Right? It's all about phrasing.
Fucking Magnus.
So I got a question. What are your wish, hopes, and dreams for a Leman Russ model? If he would happen to return, or what would you think would be the best outcome for that?
I do like a bit of the idea of maybe not full fucking wolfing, but like definitely, you know, how when your dog sees something it fucking hates, the hair starts standing up on its back. I want to see that all the way up his back. He's got to be bare chested.
Ooh,
They found his fucking armor, so of course he's got to come back half naked. But yeah,
yeah,
like,
that
and sorry, go ahead.
I agree. If he, yeah, just even just a little like a very like subtle, kind of wolf like additions, but not like a full on werewolf. That's not a bad idea either. I don't hate that. Definitely don't hate it.
Just something to show that like he's been in the fucking world. He's been in the fucking wild. He's had no touch of reality for thousands and thousands of years. So I think that'd be really cool.
I think going off what you said, Liar, where like there's got to be something that kind of like stands him out. Doing something where like in Lord of the Rings in the movie they show Bilbo, and then when he like sees the ring again, he goes all like psycho and like his face and teeth change and everything. Having just a head swap for the model.
Ooh.
Oh yeah,
where
that'd
it's
be
like
sick.
you've got like normal Leman Russ, and it's like, well, he's actually going to go full wolf in this game, and he's got like a different head that you put on. I think that'd be sick.
Yeah,
Ooh,
for sure.
man.
And then like instead of coming back with a weapon, I don't think he should have a weapon. I think he should be fucking long clawed,
Just
like
claws,
his nails are grown out and just vicious.
Some fangs.
Fucking barehanded tear out your throat. Like that would be sick.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Fantastic.
That would be very sick, actually. Yeah. You guys keep changing my mind on what Leman Russ should look like. every idea I hear, I'm like, yeah, let's do that one instead.
Every idea is a good idea when it comes to this.
Yeah. I like the head swap idea because like Demon Fulgrim has like a different head swap too. So if you want a more Odin like Russ, well, there you go. If you want a more Wolfen like Russ, well, there you go. So it all works.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
We heard you like head swaps, so we gave you some head swaps. Pimp your Leman. Oh man.
Oh boy.
All right, Liar, did you have any other thoughts or things you wanted to push out into the ether?
You know, I don't think I said it enough, but fuck Magnus. Just that.
Fantastic.
All right.
No.
Yeah. All right, get out of here. We're done.
Have a good night, good sir.
We're done with you, Liar.
You and your
Don't worry.
Magnus propaganda.
Well, to all the Thousand Suns fanboys, I know we dunked on you guys a lot and we dunked on Magnus a lot, but guess what? When we get to Magnus and the Thousand Suns, we'll be just as much a hype man at that point. So don't worry.
Exactly. Just my whole tune changes when we get to the Thousand Suns.
Exactly, and then we're gonna be, and then we're just gonna be all anti-space wolf propaganda at that point.
You know what? You know who's the real cool guys? The Thousand Suns, not like those furries, the space wolves. Like, just go real hardcore into it.
Exactly. This is the fun of being a impartial hype man for every single Primarch. Almost every single Primarch. But great episode tonight. Any closing thoughts for either Jordan or Brody?
No, I like the Space Wolves. You know, I like Leman Russ. I don't hate them like a lot of people. A lot of you people hate them.
There's nothing wrong with What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you people?
No. It was good fun.
Fantastic. Brody, any final thoughts?
I just love that we did a Space Wolf episode when they released Space Wolves. So this is
The timing on that,
fantastic.
it's just
That was
perfect.
crazy
Chef's
timing.
kiss.
I'm not gonna lie,
Chef's
I would have
kiss.
been it would have been crazy if they released a Leman Russ model
Oh,
on the Leman
dude.
Russ episode. I'd have been like, well, Mark, who's your contact 1st? Like, yeah.
Mhm.
But no, it's a good time. I really love the Space Wolves. They're like I said, top one or two. Like it kind of changes back and forth on how much I love the White Scars versus the Space Wolves. So I love the White Scars more, I think, because I have so many White Scars models. But the Space Wolves just hold a special place in my heart for sure. But yeah, Leman Russ, a really cool Primarch, a lot of depth to him that people don't really take into account. That whole like playing dumb thing, that's it's definitely his vibe, and I really like it.
Mhm.
Good
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. And as far as what's coming up next, well, we as we all know by now, we've done this for 6 Primarchs, so you guys know what follows. We're going to do the 30k Space Wolves during their Legion era, and then after that is going to be the 40k chapter era. So a lot of interesting stuff with the Space Wolves then. So tune in for that. And honestly, I got nothing else. So why don't we just why don't we just end this all with a nice little
There we go. Love it.
good
All
night,
right.
everybody.
And hey, don't forget to plug all your stuff, eh?
Oh yeah, we got a plug. We got a plug.
Oh,
Do your
wow,
plug.
yeah.
Oh man.
I can't believe that. Okay, well, I'll make this quick. If you like listening about homebrew lore, check out Lorehammer Listener Lore. Mark, me, several other guests are on that. A lot of cool stuff. If you like talking about Warhammer Fantasy or Age of Sigmar, come on over to the Grim Lore podcast, where me and my co-host Rayway talk about all things Warhammer Fantasy and a few other settings that we feel like talking about. So that's my shameless plug. I'll hand it over to you guys.
Yeah, so just also make sure to check out the Star Lores podcast, a Star Wars Legends podcast. If you like Christian and I, if you like some of our content, go over there. Just Google search us, you'll find it. It's in all the podcast hosts and all the social medias. So Star Lores, that's Star Lores, Lores, not Wars. So don't get it confused.
And then for myself, you can go on to Instagram and YouTube and find Hobby Hour in the Green Room. Basically, it's just following me and my adventures during the hobby. Basically, it's just going through and finding what average Joe hobbyists do, setting up a hobby room, going through how to make an army, painting an army, stuff like that. Just average hobbyist things that, not everything needs to be a golden demon peace winning project. It can just be an army that you love and work on over time, right? So that's Hobby Hour in the Green Room. That's it currently in production. So I've got a few episodes that I'm currently filming / editing, and we should be going out in the next month or so. So follow for more to come on that one.
Woo!
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Are we forgetting anything else, Jordan? Before
I think that's it. Yeah. We'll
Okay,
see you
it's
later.
all right. All right, this will all be fixed in post. So one more time.
Oh.